The story opens with a game-like notification announcing the Tower of Trials and the challenge of Floor 100 as it begins loading. As the message fades, portals open across the area and numerous monsters emerge alongside their boss, signaling the start of the trial. The protagonist steps onto the floor and observes the enemies. Despite their persistence, he considers their resistance futile, knowing that clearing Floor 100 is now within reach. Beside him stands a summoned golem. With quiet confidence, he identifies himself as Jinniking, the top-ranked player of Battle of Summoners, a notoriously difficult game that has long lost its mainstream audience, leaving only dedicated veterans behind. His livestream chat quickly fills with reactions. Viewers comment that there is little point in competing when he always holds the top rank, question how he maintains such strength as a free-to-play player, and marvel at his repeated record-breaking performances. Some express doubt, while others defend his skill, and a few jokingly suggest becoming one of his summons. He reflects on his journey, recognizing that he has consistently broken records and established himself as a legend within the game. More messages appear, asking if he is still occupied or progressing through earlier floors. He replies that he cleared Floor 99 long ago and senses something unusual in their questions. He acknowledges that the name Jinniking carries weight, even among top-ranked players, yet it exists only within the game. The scene shifts to him walking through city streets, still playing on his phone. Without pausing, he sends a brief response to the chat, indicating that he is currently busy. Looking at the screen, he decides that once this run is complete, he will leave the game for good. As he continues walking, he reflects on his real life. Years of gaming have left him without higher education or a stable career. Although his parents never expressed disappointment, he understands what his situation implies. At 24, he feels the need to change direction. Clearing this final challenge becomes both a conclusion to his time in the game and a step toward rebuilding his life. With that resolve, he commits to finishing this last run before moving on. Having made his decision, he begins his final run, and the scene shifts fully into the game. An energy arrow rushes toward him, and he avoids it cleanly. The boss is already split into multiple clones, each firing continuous arrows while preparing further attacks. He immediately calls up his summon interface, and an inventory filled with magical beasts appears before him. Meanwhile, the live chat continues to scroll, with viewers noting that he seems occupied and rarely checks messages, deciding to wait. Without hesitation, he selects his move and summons the white whale as a finishing action. A summoning portal opens, and a massive unicorn-like whale emerges. A system notification confirms that the white whale has been summoned. As the battle intensifies, comments begin speculating about what will happen if he reaches Floor 100 this time, while others point out that it has been 10 years since he started playing. On the battlefield, the four-winged angelic boss and its clones unleash a barrage of purple energy arrows toward him. Just before the attacks land, the white whale responds to his command and creates a water barrier, blocking the incoming arrows. Even so, the force behind the attacks is evident, and he feels the pressure of the assault. The chat reacts with excitement, describing the moment as overwhelming and admitting they have stayed with the game solely to witness the ending of Floor 100. The angelic boss and its clones continue firing until their movements slow and eventually stop from exhaustion. In that opening, he launches a water-based counterattack that strikes through them, destroying the boss and its clones instantly. He remains standing with one hand raised, watching the aftermath with a steady, confident expression. The live chat fills again with praise, noting that he never disappoints and celebrating his progress through the tower. At that moment, he senses a presence behind him and turns. A massive dragon stands there with its mouth open, gathering flames for an attack. More messages appear, drawing attention to a recent announcement. The dragon releases a blast of fire toward him. In response, he summons the Azure Dragon. A large water-based dragon appears and releases a powerful stream of water that collides with the incoming flames, stopping the attack. As the clash unfolds, the chat shifts to confusion and speculation, questioning whether the game's framework is changing and suggesting that the developers may never have expected anyone to reach this point. The fire and water-based attacks collide, creating a violent storm of swirling energy. One brief comment appears in the chat, reacting with uncertainty, while others continue speculating that the world itself might change and transform into the setting of the game. The clash ends in a large explosion that eliminates the fire dragon. At that same moment, the protagonist receives an in-game notification confirming that floor 100 of the Tower of Trials has been cleared. Standing in the middle of the road, still holding his phone, he reacts with uncontrollable excitement as he realizes he has finally completed it. His voice draws attention, and nearby pedestrians turn to look at him with confusion, assuming something is wrong. Unaware of their reactions, he presses his phone close, overwhelmed with relief and satisfaction. After years of effort, Jinniking has cleared floor 100, and with that, he considers his journey in the game complete. He opens the game again, intending to share his achievement with other veteran players before logging off for the last time. Around him, people begin to notice something unusual in the sky. Looking up, they see a massive blue, game-like screen spreading across the city, displaying a message that confirms the clearing of floor 100. Confusion spreads among the crowd as they try to understand what they are seeing. The message updates, announcing that the beta test is ending. The protagonist looks up at the sky in shock, unable to understand why the game interface is appearing in reality. Moments later, red scrolls begin falling from above. People in the street watch in confusion as they land around them. A student picks up one of the scrolls and examines it. As soon as he touches it, a blue screen appears before him, instructing him to tear the summoning scroll. Unsure, he asks his friend if it is some kind of event. Curious, she encourages trying it. As he begins to tear the scroll, the protagonist notices and urgently warns him to stop, but the warning comes too late. The instant the scroll is torn, it explodes, killing the student. The blue screen appears again, announcing that a new world is opening. Immediately, the sky turns crimson. Wyverns begin circling overhead, while monsters and golems emerge from the ground. The city is rapidly overtaken, transforming into chaos as the world shifts into something resembling the game itself. Lost in his thoughts, the protagonist fails to notice a truck approaching from behind. Still processing the chaos unfolding around him, he struggles to accept what he has just witnessed. A sudden light draws his attention, and he turns, but the impact comes before he can react. A nearby woman screams as she sees him struck and calls for help. People gather quickly, surrounding his motionless body while she urges someone to contact emergency services. Lying on the road, unable to move, he forces his eyes toward his fallen phone and curses the game in his mind. His vision fades, and he loses consciousness. The scene transitions to a hospital room. He lies unconscious on a bed while his mother sits beside him, quietly peeling an apple. His father stands nearby, watching in silence. A news broadcast begins. The report discusses the International Player League, noting South Korea's continued poor performance and the growing concern over the lack of high-rank summons. Analysts argue that limited resources prevent the country from acquiring stronger summoning scrolls. The broadcast continues, emphasizing the need for stronger summons while questioning whether the necessary investment is even possible. On the bed, he slowly regains consciousness. His eyes open, and his mother immediately notices, calling out in shock. In her haste, she drops the knife and tells his father to get a doctor, announcing that Jinwoo has woken up. Sometime later, as he speaks with his parents, he begins to process everything. The information he hears leaves him stunned. 3 years have passed since the accident. More importantly, what he witnessed just before losing consciousness, the merging of the game with reality, was real. At that moment, a small golem enters the hospital room. He recognizes it as his father's summon, a simple pebble golem now used for everyday tasks like carrying loads. Watching it, he realizes this is no illusion. The world has truly changed. He questions the situation further, noting that even an E-rank summon like that belongs to his father. The implications begin to settle in. The television continues in the background, reporting that world-class rankers are searching for someone known as Jinniking, believing that finding him is key to advancing the Tower of Trials. The screen shows the world's top-ranked player, Rachel, identified as part of a group known as the Five Emperors, waiting for his appearance and suggesting that his return would disrupt the balance of the world. Hearing this, he understands clearly that they are searching for him. The name Jinniking belongs to him, and the person shown on screen is someone he recognizes from a game. He concludes that the world of Battle of Summoners has become reality. At that moment, a blue system interface appears before him, asking whether he wishes to begin the tutorial. He lets out a quiet laugh. His mother, still seated beside him, tells him not to rush and to focus on resting first, acknowledging how sudden everything must feel. He reassures her calmly, saying he needs to adapt quickly and that his condition is fine, asking her not to worry. As he looks ahead, he reflects on his situation. He is nothing yet and does not fully understand how this new world operates, but the circumstances do not intimidate him. To him, this is familiar ground, and with that confidence, he believes he can rise to the very top once again. Back at his home, he sits in front of his computer, going through information about the world he has returned to. Since being discharged from the hospital, he has been trying to understand how Battle of Summoners has become reality. News articles on the screen repeatedly mention the country's poor standing in global rankings and the urgent need to find Jinyagod, a figure believed to be key to changing that situation. Others refer to him as a mentor of top rankers, questioning his whereabouts. As he reads further, he organizes what he has learned. Systems that once existed only in the game, player battles, raids, dungeons, and the Tower of Trials, are now part of everyday life. 3 years after the incident, people have adapted to living alongside summons as if it were normal. He leans back, then rises from his chair, concluding that regardless of these changes, others are unlikely to surpass his level of skill. With that confidence, he opens the system interface. A connection prompt appears, and he proceeds without hesitation, deciding to begin. A notification confirms that the tutorial will start. The scene shifts to a quiet park on a mountain hill. Standing in the empty space, he notes that the area is deserted, which is exactly why he chose it. Since summons can be unpredictable, he needed a place without people. A system message appears, granting him 2 low-grade summoning scrolls as a tutorial reward, along with a warning to use them only outdoors. Holding the 2 red scrolls, he feels a sense of tension. For the first time, the situation feels fully real, and he hopes to obtain something useful. Drawing from his experience, he understands the risk. No matter his past reputation, starting with weak summons would put him at a severe disadvantage. The game was always known for its harsh randomness and extremely low pull rates. He recalls the grading system of summoning scrolls, ranging from S down to F, with probabilities heavily skewed toward lower tiers. Even obtaining a mid to high rank from a low-grade scroll requires overcoming extremely low odds, making the outcome uncertain despite his confidence. Holding one of the red scrolls in both hands, he pauses and silently hopes for a usable result. Even a low-tier outcome would be acceptable to him, as long as it is not completely worthless. He steels himself and tears the scroll. A system message appears, confirming that a low-grade summoning scroll is being used. For a brief moment, nothing happens, and he wonders if the process has worked at all or how a summon is supposed to appear. Suddenly, a bright blue light bursts out from the torn scroll. Startled by the intensity, he instinctively throws it away in alarm. At that moment, a system notification appears, announcing that Baek Jinwoo has obtained a summon identified as Wind Fairy, ranked EX. From the fading light, a small fairy emerges, with blonde hair, pointed ears, and butterfly-like wings. She stretches as if waking from a long rest. Seeing this, he is left stunned. The existence of an EX rank is something he has never encountered before. The fairy slowly opens her eyes, looking around in confusion before realizing she has been summoned. Her reaction quickly turns into excitement, as she expresses relief at finally being called again after a long time. He watches in disbelief, unable to process how a summon is speaking so naturally. Trying to make sense of it, he asks her a question to confirm her identity, recalling a familiar name. She denies that name at first, identifying herself as the Wind Fairy, but then hesitates as if recognizing something. She realizes that only one person ever used that name for her. Her expression changes as she looks at him more closely and asks if he is the one she remembers. Overcome with emotion, she rushes toward him and clings to him, clearly relieved to see him again after so long. He reacts awkwardly, still trying to process the situation. As he thinks back, he remembers this summon from the game. Originally an E-rank unit, the Wind Fairy had hidden potential. With the right setup and enhancements, it could significantly increase attack speed and become far stronger than its base rank suggested. He recalls his early days in the game, when he was still inexperienced and relied heavily on this summon. Back then, he had used it for so long that he even gave it a nickname. But something does not add up. Watching the fairy cling to him, he remembers that this summon was removed during an early bug fix patch. To confirm, he opens the system panel and reviews the information. He recalls that the summon had once been flagged for causing extreme imbalance and was restricted as a result. The system now lists it as an EX rank entity under a quarantine designation, noting that it had been sealed due to a game-breaking issue tied to its abilities. Reading further, he sees its skill description, which increases a target's attack speed with each action. The details bring back his frustration from the past, when a summon he had developed for so long was removed without compensation. The term quarantine designation stands out to him, and he questions its meaning. The Wind Fairy, still emotional, explains that she was suddenly taken somewhere unknown and trapped there, unable to leave. She expresses relief at being summoned again and insists on staying by his side. He stops her and asks directly who is responsible for confining her. She hesitates, caught off guard by the question. As she tries to respond, her words falter. Suddenly, she reacts as if in pain, clutching her head and pulling away slightly, claiming that she cannot remember clearly. She suggests that some kind of restriction may have been placed on her. He watches her calmly and asks her to at least explain what she does remember. After a pause, she admits that there is not much she can say with certainty. However, she confirms that she and others were quarantined, and that no matter how much players tried, they were unable to be summoned. He focuses on her wording and asks for clarification about others. She confirms that there were more like her, though not in the same place, and she does not know their identities. Still, she is certain there were multiple entities, possibly around 10. That number immediately catches his attention. He thinks back to the summons he once used that were later removed under the label of bugs. The possibility forms in his mind that those lost summons may have all been reclassified as EX rank and placed under quarantine. The Wind Fairy continues, explaining that tearing a summoning scroll now seems to create an opportunity for them to respond again. She notes how unusual it is, especially since it has been a long time since she was able to answer the call of a low-grade scroll. He considers the situation carefully and realizes that the summons only respond when he tears the scrolls himself. From that, he reaches a clear conclusion. He may be the only one capable of obtaining EX rank summons. To test this, he takes out another red scroll and begins tearing it, wondering if this ability is a reward for clearing floor 100 of the Tower of Trials. A system message confirms the use of a low-grade summoning scroll. As he waits for the result, he considers the possibility that every scroll he uses might now carry a chance of producing an EX rank summon. Another system notification appears, announcing the result. A small blue gorilla materializes, beating its chest loudly as it appears. The system identifies it as a fur gorilla, ranked F. Seeing this, his expectation drops immediately. The result confirms that EX rank summons are not guaranteed and still depend on chance. The Wind Fairy hovers nearby, reacting to the new summon, while he quietly acknowledges the randomness and recalls how unforgiving the system has always been. He reassesses his approach. If the outcome depends on probability, then increasing the number of attempts is the only way forward. By gathering more scrolls and continuing to summon, he may eventually collect EX rank entities. If that happens, he could surpass even his former peak strength. He calls out to the Wind Fairy, using the nickname he once gave her. She responds enthusiastically. He then asks her to stop calling him by his old title and instead use his real name, Jinwoo. She questions the change, but he has already considered the risks. The name associated with his past achievements has spread widely, and revealing his identity now could draw unnecessary attention. With the world already aware of Jinyagod and powerful figures searching for him, exposing himself, especially with the ability to control EX rank summons, would make him a target. Before the conversation can continue, the atmosphere around them shifts. Birds suddenly scatter from the area, the air grows heavy, and the ground begins to tremble. Both summons react with confusion as the disturbance intensifies. A system notification appears, announcing the transition to the next stage. Another message follows, stating that a beginner-level dungeon has appeared. A portal forms directly in front of him. He instinctively tenses at the sight. The sudden appearance catches him off guard, and he questions the timing. Despite his extensive experience clearing dungeons in the past, he recognizes that this is no longer a controlled environment. This is reality. He steadies himself, acknowledging his fear, but forcing himself to remain composed. He reminds himself that he will rely on his summons rather than fight directly, and that this is only a tutorial dungeon. The system prompts him again. He looks at the portal, understanding what comes next. With that, he prepares himself and steps forward, determined to adapt to this new world. He steps through the portal, and finds himself inside a cave. Water drips steadily from the ceiling, echoing faintly against the rocks, giving the place a damp and uneasy atmosphere. He looks around, confirming that he has entered the dungeon, though the environment feels far more unsettling than anything he experienced in the game. A system notification appears, confirming that Baek Jinwoo has entered a beginner dungeon. He focuses on the interface as the next set of instructions appears. It explains that dungeon combat requires forming a team of summons, with up to 5 members allowed. The system prompts him to assign the Wind Fairy and the Fur Gorilla as his current team. He considers the situation. Normally, a full team would be used to maximize the chances of success. Entering with only 2 summons might seem risky, but he knows it is manageable with proper strategy. Relying on his past experience, he recalls having gone through similar scenarios countless times and proceeds without hesitation. He confirms the team assignment. Immediately, both the Wind Fairy and the Fur Gorilla are summoned in front of him. The fairy reacts lightly as she appears, while the gorilla lets out a low growl. He steadies himself and tries to recall the layout and enemies of the tutorial dungeon. Before he can fully process it, a sound comes from behind. A low growl echoes through the cave. He turns toward it, tension rising as a system alert appears, indicating that a starving gray wolf is nearby. The wolf steps into view, moving slowly toward him. Another system message appears, setting the objective: defeat the wolf and escape the cave. He identifies it as an F-rank creature. At the same time, a protective shield forms around him, made up of hexagonal segments. Observing it, he recognizes the familiar player protection system from the game, now functioning in reality. However, a warning message follows, stating that if the shield is lost and he is attacked, it will result in death. The implication is clear. This is no longer a situation where failure can be reset. The wolf continues advancing, growling as it closes the distance. He immediately commands the Fur Gorilla to attack. The gorilla charges forward, but as he watches, he realizes its speed is slower than expected. He had anticipated this limitation. Without delay, he calls for the Wind Fairy. She responds quickly, spinning her staff and activating her ability. The skill enhances the gorilla's attack speed, and after a brief moment of adjustment, the effect takes hold. The gorilla's movement accelerates sharply as it rushes toward the wolf. Watching this, he feels a brief sense of satisfaction, recognizing the effectiveness of the combination. At the same time, the wolf responds by increasing its own speed, its presence appearing more threatening up close than he remembers. He watches the two close in on each other and questions the outcome for a moment, aware that the situation is no longer as predictable as it once was. He assesses the situation based on everything he knows. Under normal conditions, the outcome should be certain. Still, he remains cautious, aware that reality may introduce unexpected variables. The gorilla and the gray wolf collide. The impact is immediate and violent. Both creatures clash head-on, their roars overlapping as the struggle turns physical. Blood scatters from the exchange as they grapple for control. When emotion settles, the wolf has forced the gorilla to the ground and clamps its jaws onto the gorilla's shoulder. The gorilla struggles, growling in pain. Watching from distance, he reacts quickly and calls for the Wind Fairy. She responds, continuing to channel her ability without pause, maintaining the enhancement on the gorilla. The gorilla retaliates, driving a heavy punch into the wolf's jaw. The impact forces the wolf back, blood spilling as it is thrown across the ground. The Wind Fairy intensifies her support, pushing the gorilla further. With the added boost, the gorilla surges forward, leaps, and delivers a powerful strike to the wolf's abdomen. It follows with a series of relentless blows, each impact shaking the ground beneath them. He and the Wind Fairy watch closely, both tense as the fight reaches its peak. Eventually, the wolf stops moving. The gorilla ceases its attack and lets out a victorious roar, beating its chest. The Wind Fairy celebrates beside him, while he exhales in relief, the tension finally easing. A system notification appears, confirming that the dungeon has been cleared and granting a reward of low-grade strength runes. He quietly acknowledges that he has survived. The scene shifts to a city filled with tall buildings and active streets. A young woman walks along, counting the money she has earned. She is surprised by the amount, realizing how much she has made in a single day. She is Baek Ajin, his younger sister. As she moves through the street, she reflects on the past. After the world changed 3 years ago and her brother's accident left the family struggling, she chose to become a player. By running low-level dungeons and collecting runes, she has been able to earn a steady income. She recalls a turning point when she obtained a mid-grade summoning scroll and, against the odds, received a C-rank summon. That summon allowed her to continue farming efficiently and build her current livelihood. Her phone rings, showing a call from her brother. She answers, surprised to hear from him so soon after his discharge. He confirms that he has left the hospital and asks about her work. She immediately corrects his wording, emphasizing that her role is rune farming, not something lesser. Caught off guard by her reaction, he adjusts his tone and continues, asking where he can find a fusion center. She explains that such facilities are located within designated player zones. After the Tower of Trials appeared across the world, these zones were established near the towers to handle all summon-related activities, including dungeons, fusion, and enhancements. The scene shifts again to a restaurant, where the two sit together. She explains further that in their country, only specific locations became Towers of Trials, and the surrounding player zones developed accordingly. All essential facilities were built nearby for efficiency. He listens and agrees that concentrating resources near the towers makes sense. She then asks about his summons, expecting low ranks. He gives a simple answer, which surprises her slightly given the odds. He avoids elaborating and quietly acknowledges to himself that he is not being fully honest. He then asks for her help, explaining that he needs to adapt to the system as quickly as possible. He offers compensation, though she points out that she is already earning more than him. He responds casually, suggesting that circumstances can change and that he may rise further than expected. She dismisses the idea, comparing it to unrealistic claims made by others, and insists that top players are fundamentally different. He does not argue and simply smiles. Standing up, he tells her to guide him. He wants to see the player zone for himself and understand how this new world operates. The scene shifts tonight. The city is lit by countless lights, with buildings of varying heights stretching across the skyline. At its center stands a massive, unfamiliar skyscraper, while a river flows quietly along the street. A few people pause along the footpath, taking in the view. On that same path, Jinwoo and his sister, Ajin, walk side by side. As they move, Ajin asks about the summon he mentioned earlier. He answers briefly, saying it was a wind fairy. She reacts with confusion, unfamiliar with the name, and asks him to show it. He refuses without hesitation. Irritated, she points out that there is no reason to hide it. In response, he stops and tells her to show her summon first. She questions him for a moment, then agrees. With a confident expression, she begins the summoning. A swirl of light purple energy gathers in her palm, forming into a shape. Before completing it, she warns him not to be surprised. He watches quietly, wondering what justifies her confidence. From the light, a figure appears, a white-haired, gray-skinned elf with a composed presence, holding a dagger. A system notification identifies it as a C-rank shadow elf. He freezes slightly at the result, his reaction far more subdued than she expected. Noticing this, she expresses her dissatisfaction, emphasizing that C-rank summons are considered high-tier and rare. He acknowledges her point outwardly, though his thoughts differ. From his experience, such ranks were never particularly valuable in actual gameplay and were often treated as expendable resources. Still observing the summon, he tries addressing it directly, attempting to speak to it. The shadow elf shows no response beyond a simple, confused expression. Ajin watches him, puzzled by his behavior, and questions what he is doing. He explains that he was simply trying to communicate with the summon, but she immediately clarifies that summons do not speak. He pauses, caught off guard. In his experience, that should not be the case. He recalls his first interaction with the Wind Fairy, who spoke naturally from the moment she appeared. That memory contradicts what he is hearing now. To confirm, he asks if summons are truly incapable of speech. Ajin responds with certainty, questioning where such a thing would even exist. He accepts her answer outwardly, but continues thinking. If that is true, then the Wind Fairy is clearly an exception. He reflects on her behavior and realizes that she is not normal by any standard within this world. Ajin brings the conversation back, asking him again to show his summon. He avoids the request and starts walking ahead, saying he will do it later. She calls after him in frustration, pointing out that she already showed hers, but he does not stop. Jinwoo continues walking ahead and calls back to his sister that he will show her later. As he moves, he considers the situation carefully. Drawing attention to himself now would only cause problems, so he decides to avoid interacting openly with a wind fairy in public. Realizing he does not know the way, he calls out to Ajin to guide him. She reacts with frustration, but quickly follows. The scene shifts to a new area filled with activity. The streets are crowded with people, many accompanied by their summons. Advanced technology lines the surroundings, and bright billboards illuminate the space. Standing there, Jinwoo looks around in surprise. The place feels completely different from what it once was. He recognizes the location and realizes it used to be Jamsil World. Ajin confirms this, explaining that after the Tower of Trials appeared, everything was demolished and rebuilt. He questions why such a place would be removed, but she points toward the massive, ominous tower nearby and explains that no one will want to treat the area as a place for leisure anymore. What was once meant for entertainment became dangerous as dungeons overtook the space. He considers her explanation and agrees. The reality of the situation is clear. Even so, as he looks around, he feels a sense of excitement. Experiencing in real life what he once only knew from a game creates a strange thrill, despite the danger. Nearby, players trade items openly. He asks about the marketplace, and Ajin explains that it is where players exchange scrolls, runes, and other resources. The scene brings back memories for him, recalling how he once spent freely within the game environment. Ajin then points out an information desk, explaining that most essential details can be found there. She also suggests that, as a beginner, he should consider training in an academy to build his fundamentals. He dismisses the idea casually. From his perspective, there is nothing he needs to learn. He decides instead to remain in the area and focus on progressing through his own methods. Ajin grows slightly concerned and asks if he is sure about this approach. He reassures her and tells her to go ahead without him. She is surprised that he intends to stay behind, but he has already started walking away, saying he wants to explore on his own. She watches him leave, confused by his behavior. To her, he seems distant and different from before. Still, she resolves to trust him and simply keep an eye on him from afar. She calls out one last time, telling him not to overdo things and to contact her if needed. He turns briefly, gives a small wave, and continues on. The scene shifts to a quiet corridor inside a high-tech building. Looking around, Jinwoo confirms that the area is empty enough to avoid attention. He then calls out to the wind fairy. She appears instantly and rushes toward him with excitement, but he quickly stops her, covering her mouth to silence her. After checking his surroundings, he crouches near a closed shop, holding her carefully. Bringing her closer, he speaks in a low, serious tone, telling her that from now on, she must not speak when they are outside. The wind fairy reacts with confusion, unable to respond properly as she processes his sudden restriction. Holding the wind fairy in one hand and covering her mouth with the other, Jinwoo lowers his voice and explains that they cannot afford to draw attention. From now on, she is only allowed to speak inside dungeons. He asks her to signal if she understands, and she nods in agreement. Satisfied, he releases her and takes a moment to think. Crouching down, he scrolls through his phone, considering his next steps. If he wants to start running dungeons seriously, he needs capital. Checking his balance, he lets out a quiet sigh. The amount is minimal, far worse than he expected. He reflects on his situation. Even accounting for the accident, having so little money feels like hitting rock bottom. Returning to part-time work would only slow him down, and relying on his parents is not an option. They're already struggling enough, working multiple jobs to support the family. Asking them for money would only add to their burden. He steadies himself and decides to start from nothing if necessary. From his past experience, he knows that his strength never came from spending money. Even in a system filled with pay-to-win elements, he reached the top without relying on purchases. That principle has not changed just because the world has. As he resolves to climb again through effort alone, a sudden notification appears on his phone. A deposit of 500,000 won has been made. He stares at the screen in disbelief and quickly checks the message attached to it. It is from his mother. She explains that she heard from Ajin that he is already trying to move forward again, and knowing he would never ask for help, she sent what she could. Reading it, he falls silent. The weight of her words and everything she endured while caring for him becomes clear. He recalls her voice from before, calling for him to wake up. Quietly, he thanks her. Wiping his eyes, he tightens his resolve. He decides that he will succeed and make sure his family no longer has to struggle. With renewed focus, he opens the system interface and looks at the shop. Others have had a 3-year head start, so time matters. If he wants to reach the top again, he has to act immediately. Growth requires resources, and resources come from dungeons. He purchases 3 low-grade summoning scrolls. Without hesitation, he uses all 3 at once. The first summon appears as a small, blue, slime-like creature, identified as an F-rank sludge lump. The second is a strange insect-like creature with small horns, identified as an F-rank horn butterfly. The third is a purple reptile with sharp claws, identified as an E-rank poison lizard. He crouches to examine them. Getting an E-rank among these results is a relatively good outcome. Including the Wind Fairy, he has already exceeded the usual probability more than once in just a few attempts. He evaluates the lizard as particularly useful for its efficiency, while mentally noting that the weaker summons will only be temporary. With that, he considers his current lineup sufficient for a starting team. He reviews the system in his mind. Progress depends on acquiring summons, equipping and adjusting runes, fighting, leveling up, and repeating the cycle. Farming, hunting, and summoning form the entire foundation of growth. This is something he is fully prepared to commit to. Looking ahead, he considers the potential of gathering all 10 EX rank summons. With that, even the highest challenges would no longer be out of reach. For now, his priority is clear. He will locate every remaining EX rank summon and bring them under his control. With a faint smile, Jinwoo gathers his thoughts and decides it is time to move forward. The next step is clear. He needs to find a dungeon. He begins searching on his phone, looking up dungeon locations. As he scrolls, he recalls how simple it used to be in the game, where entering a dungeon only required selecting a stage. Now he questions how that process works in reality. While browsing, something unexpected catches his attention. His expression changes immediately, and he reacts in shock. People nearby glance at him, confused by his sudden reaction, but he barely notices. Reading further, his hands begin to tremble slightly. Even with a summon, entry into dungeons is not guaranteed. He continues scanning the information and realizes the restriction. Players cannot enter dungeons unless they are officially registered. This surprises him. He processes the details. Dungeon gates appear randomly, and their difficulty can be estimated by the energy they emit, but regardless of level, access is now controlled. Only registered players are allowed to enter. The realization sinks in. He sits down on a nearby bench, visibly discouraged. Of all the times to wake up, it had to be after such rules were enforced. Seeing his mood, the Wind Fairy gently taps his shoulder. He looks at her and, despite everything, feels a small sense of relief. He thanks her quietly and pats her head, regaining some composure. After a brief pause, he calls his sister. The scene shifts to their home, where Ajin is resting on her bed while talking on the phone. She asks when he plans to return, mentioning that their mother is wondering about dinner. He tells her not to worry about it, and instead brings up what he just learned, that player registration is required before entering dungeons. Ajin reacts, realizing she forgot to mention it earlier. She explains that the rule was introduced recently after too many casualties occurred in dungeons. To prevent further loss, the government now enforces strict entry requirements, with personnel stationed at dungeon entrances. Hearing this, he understands the reasoning, though it complicates his plans. He reflects on the process. Registration involves tests and combat evaluations, adding another layer of difficulty. It seems designed to control the number of active players, likely to prevent social instability if too many people pursue this path. As he thinks, Ajin brings up another detail, the ranking system. This catches his attention. She explains that rankings are updated annually, listing the top players both domestically and globally. Their country does not rank highly, and many believe that if the legendary Jinnaking were to appear, it could change everything. He responds briefly, avoiding the topic, and ends the call. Afterward, he stands still for a moment, reviewing everything in his mind. Despite the obstacles, he feels that his preparation has begun properly. For now, he decides to stop and continue the next steps later. The scene shifts to Jinwa's home early in the morning. In the kitchen, his mother prepares food while his father sits at the dining table reading a newspaper. The quiet routine is interrupted as Jinwoo steps out of his room. His father notices immediately and asks why he is up so early. Jinwoo replies that he plans to head out. Hearing this, his mother stops cooking and turns toward him with concern, suggesting he eats something before leaving. Jinwoo, sitting near the door as he ties his shoelaces, reassures her that he is fine and does not need anything. Once he finishes, he calls out to both of them. They come closer, still worried. He looks back at them and, with a calm expression, apologizes for the way he has been until now. He thanks them and tells them he will return. Without waiting further, he leaves the house. His parents remain standing there, momentarily taken aback. His father reacts first, brushing it off with a faint sense of pride, noting how unexpectedly sincere his son sounded. His mother, however, remains anxious and asks if Jinwoo will be all right. His father reassures her, reminding her that safety systems and training are now managed by the government. He then urges her to finish their meal and prepare to leave as well. She glances toward the door, still uneasy, and quietly hopes for his safety. The scene shifts to a large office building. Inside, a long line of people stretches across the hall, all waiting to register as players. Jinwoo stands among them. As he observes the crowd, he reflects on the current state of the world. Becoming a player is now something anyone can attempt, and the opportunity has drawn countless people in. However, the consequences have already been seen. In the early stages, the country gained attention for its high dungeon death rates. Many rushed and driven by ambition and overconfidence, believing themselves capable of overcoming everything. That mindset led to reckless decisions, forcing entry into dungeons without preparation and ultimately losing their lives. Standing in line, Jinwoo scrolls through news reports on his phone. The headlines describe the country's decline. Once known for its dominance in gaming, it now ranks near the bottom globally. Reports point to the loss of skilled players and rising deaths in dungeons, with many cases involving inexperienced individuals forcing their way in. Reading this, he reflects that many of these deaths stem from overconfidence and misplaced belief. People treated this world like a fantasy where they were the central figure, ignoring the risks. Even he recognizes the irony, after spending 10 years immersed in the game, but from his perspective, their actions still seem careless. The lack of fear stands out to him. His thoughts are interrupted when his turn arrives. Inside a glass booth, a receptionist calls for the next person. Jinwoo steps forward and submits his application. After a brief check, she confirms that his registration is complete. He asks how many applicants will qualify. She explains that only 50 people will pass the final evaluation and earn the title of player. He glances back at the long line behind him. There are already well over 1,000 applicants. The competition will not be easy. As he leaves the building, he considers the situation. If he cannot pass something like this, then everything he once achieved would mean nothing. Looking up at the sky, he steadies himself with quiet confidence. The scene shifts to a cafeteria inside the same facility. Several people sit around, reviewing applications and discussing the selection process. Among them is Park Chang-sik, a member of the evaluation committee. He expresses frustration at the limited number of candidates being selected, criticizing the restrictive approach. Suddenly, an explosion erupts at the entrance. The room falls into chaos as people shout and scramble for safety. From the smoke, a man steps forward, accompanied by multiple summoned creatures. His tone is calm but hostile as he addresses Park Chang-sik, accusing him of responsibility for his associates' deaths. Park Chang-sik recognizes him immediately and reacts with tension. In response, he summons his own creatures. Several powerful entities emerge around him, forming a defensive stance as the situation escalates. At the same time, Jinwoo sits at a corner table, wearing headphones and scrolling through his phone, initially unaware of what is happening. Around him, others react in fear, recognizing that both the gang and headquarters personnel are present, making the confrontation even more dangerous. Sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, Jinwoo looks up. He turns toward the scene, realizing the situation unfolding before him and questioning how things escalated so abruptly. As the two players face off, their massive summons filling the cramped space. The air is thick with tension as they prepare to clash. Jinwoo looks back over his shoulder, a bead of sweat running down his face as he realizes he's stuck in the middle of a literal war zone. This is definitely not how he expected his morning to go. The cafe crowd murmurs in confusion as the peaceful atmosphere is suddenly shattered. Something big is going down, and no one knows what's happening. Civilians huddle together, panic setting in as they realize they might be in the crossfire of a deadly encounter. One guy recognizes the man facing down the threat. It's Park Chang-sik, a legendary figure when it comes to dealing with gangs. Beak Jinwoo stands in the background, looking more annoyed than scared as the situation escalates. He just wanted a quiet moment, but reality has other plans. The unnamed gang member stands tall, his massive blood orc and floating ibit looming behind him. He's here for a fight, and he's brought the heavy hitters to make sure he wins. Park Chang-ik steps up, shouting for everyone to deploy their summons and raise their shields. He knows a gang using high-level summons like this is a code red emergency. Blue hexagonal barriers flare up as everyone tries to protect themselves. Jin Woo stays back, keeping a close eye on the unfolding battle while his own shield activates. Jin Woo quietly calls for Ramba, Wind Fairy, as he assesses the threat. He needs his own support ready, just in case things get even messier. Ramba pops into existence, tilting her head as she tries to make sense of all the yelling and magic. She looks ready to help, but Jinwoo has other ideas. He quickly brings a finger to his lips, signaling for her to stay completely silent. They have a deal about her not talking in public, and he's not about to let her break it now. He whispers a reminder about their promise, while Ramba looks back with a pouty, slightly annoyed expression. She's got plenty to say, but for now, she'll stick to the rules. The gang member smirks at Park Chang-ik, mockingly calling him an apostle of justice before getting down to business. He's clearly enjoying the fear he's causing. The massive blood orc roars, stomping forward and swinging its heavy weapon. The sheer power behind the move sends tremors through the cafe floor. Jinwoo ducks behind a table, deciding that staying low and watching is his best bet. Getting involved is just going to be a giant headache he doesn't need right now. He watches the exchange with narrow eyes, curious to see how the pros of this new world handle a real combat scenario. It's a good chance to gather some data. A barrage of fireballs streaks through the air, courtesy of Park's Flame Turtle Summon. They light up the room as they head straight for the enemy orc. The fireballs collide in a massive explosion, filling the space with blinding light and heat. It looks like a direct hit that should have ended things. But as the smoke clears, the orc is still standing, completely unharmed. A strange red glow pulses across its skin, signaling that something is protecting it. The gang member laughs, taunting Park for such a weak effort. He's fully confident that nothing they throw can break through his summon's defense. Park Chang-ik grits his teeth, his frustration evident as his best attack fails to leave even a scratch. He's starting to realize this fight isn't going to be as simple as he thought. Observing from behind, Jinwoo has identified the issue with this battle. He already has dozens of ways to pierce through that orc's defense. Watching the struggle, Jinwoo couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment, inwardly cursing the tactic as absolute trash. To him, the mistake Park was making was as clear as day. In the back, people began whispering that Park was being backed into a corner, and if things continued this way, the congressman would surely lose. The situation was growing more dire by the second. Jinwoo hesitates, weighing the risks of stepping in. If he helps out, he'll definitely be dragged into a mess of paperwork and attention he wants to avoid. The orc's axe comes down again, a massive blade of steel that threatens to end the fight for good. The danger to the civilians is getting too high to ignore. The heavy blade swings through the air, kicking up dust and debris as the orc continues its relentless assault. The sound of the impact is deafening. Jinwoo stares blankly for a moment, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. If he doesn't do something, people are actually going to die here. He realizes his hope for a quiet life is about to go up in smoke if he gets killed in some random cafe skirmish. He has to take action whether he likes it or not. Jinwoo finally stands up and calls out to Park, who immediately tells him to stay back because it's way too dangerous. But Jinwoo isn't planning on getting close. Park pauses, confused, as Jinwoo points out that the flame turtle's timing is the reason the fire attacks aren't landing. He's giving advice like a pro gamer, coaching a newbie. Jinwoo points directly at the orc, telling Park to look at the buffers supporting it from the rear. He's seen this mechanic 1,000 times in the game. He identifies the real problem. The IBAT is casting a fire resistance buff every time Park tries to attack with fire. That's why the explosions aren't doing anything. He explains the mechanics clearly, showing that a fire attack will never work as long as that buff is active. It's a basic strategy that Park completely overlooked. Park Chang-ik looks over, finally noticing the orc's body turning red exactly when the buffer in the back uses its skill. The realization hits him like a ton of bricks. Now that he knows the secret, Park's expression changes to one of grim determination. He signals his treat to get ready for a different kind of attack. The orc prepares to lunge again, but Park is already one step ahead, waiting for the split second the buff drops. He's got the timing down now. He shouts for the flame turtle to attack at the exact moment the resistance fades. This is the opening they've been waiting for. A massive pillar of fire erupts, this time connecting with full force and scorching the orc's flesh. The strategy worked perfectly. Park is visibly thrilled, his confidence returning as he sees his attacks finally having an effect. He can hardly believe a random civilian had the answer. The gang member is absolutely stunned, his mouth hanging open as he wonders how someone could have figured out his tricks so easily. His perfect plan is falling apart. Park's tree slams its massive roots into the ground, sending them snaking toward the source of the buffers. It's time to take out the support. The wooden limbs burst from the floor and snatch the ibit right out of the air, crushing it instantly. The gang member can only watch in horror as his edge disappears. With the resistance gone, the flame turtle unleashes its ultimate breath, incinerating the orc in a torrent of pure heat. The fight is over before the enemy can even react. The flame turtle's final blast engulfs the area in a blinding pillar of fire, signaling the end of the struggle. The massive blood orc is completely incinerated, leaving the unnamed gang member in a state of absolute shock as his trump card vanishes into ash. He stares at the empty space, unable to believe his summon was defeated so quickly. Park Changio steps through the settling dust, his shadow looming over the defeated criminal who is now backed against his own barrier. The tide has turned completely. The gang member completely loses his nerve, falling to his knees and desperately begging for his life. He offers to surrender and turn himself in. Hopping for any way out of the situation, Park Changio looks down at him with cold, unrelenting eyes. Unmoved by the man's desperate pleas, he tells the man to shut up as his tree's massive wooden roots surge forward, tightly binding the criminal so he can't escape. There will be no mercy this time. The roots lift the man off the ground as Park reminds him of the harsh new law. Gang members caught in the act are to be executed on the spot. The gravity of the situation finally sinks in for everyone watching. The criminal's eyes widen in sheer terror as he realizes he won't be seeing the inside of courtroom. His fate is already sealed. Park stands tall, his expression devoid of pity as he prepares his summon to deliver the final judgment. Justice in this world is swift and brutal. The wooden roots tighten and spear through the target, ending the threat with a gruesome spray of blood. The terrorist attack is officially over. Silence falls over the cafe as the patrons slowly process the violent scene they just witnessed. A young couple looks on, trembling as they wonder if the danger has truly passed. The tension breaks as the crowd begins to cheer, hailing Park Changik as a hero for saving them from the gang. They seem more relieved than horrified by the execution. Amidst the celebratory shouting, Beak Jin Woo stands still, a look of profound discomfort on his face. He finds it disturbing how easily the crowd cheers for a death, even that of a criminal. He watches the people around him, feeling more like an outsider than ever in a world that has become so desensitized to violence. Rambo Wind Fairy sits atop his head, sharing his somber mood. Jinmu realizes that the world he once knew is truly gone, replaced by a reality where survival requires a much colder kind of resolve. He'll have to adapt if he wants to stay alive. Heavy footsteps approach as Park Changik walks across the shattered floor toward his unlikely savior. He looks remarkably composed after the execution. He introduces himself formally as a council member from player headquarters and offers his sincere thanks for the tactical advice that saved him. He's impressed by the young man's insight. Park extends his hand, and Jin Woo takes it. Though he brushes off his contribution as if it were nothing special, he doesn't want to make a big deal out of it. Park expressed his desire to reward Jin Woo for his help and asked which guild he belonged to, clearly attempting to scout potential talent. However, Jin Woo replied that he had only just submitted his registration application this morning. Internally, the congressman is baffled. He can't understand how someone with such deep knowledge of summon buffs hasn't officially registered as a player yet. It just doesn't add up. He reassures Jin Woo that as long as they can verify his identity with an ID card, the reward process will be smooth. He's determined to track this mysterious person down. Jin Woo pulls out his ID card and hands it over, finally revealing his name to the official. It's a small price to pay for a reward, or so he thinks. Park takes the card, explaining that a standard background check is required before they can issue any reward according to regulations. He's already planning his next move. Jin Woo accepts the explanation and prepares to leave, waving a casual goodbye as he heads back into the city. He's done with the cafe for today. Park's expression remains serious as he watches Jin Woo walk away, his mind clearly working through the mystery of the young man's uncanny abilities. He's not going to let this go. He takes out his phone and quickly taps the screen to start a call, his face set in a grim line. Something about Jin Woo has piqued his suspicion. He tells the person on the other end that he's just sent over some data that needs to be scrutinized immediately. He wants answers. He specifically mentions the name Beak Jinwoo, making it clear that he wants a deep dive into the protagonist's history. He's looking for anything that might explain the boy's expertise. While Jinwoo walks down the street with Ramber on his head, Park gives the order to look into every detail of his life. The hunt for information has begun. The sun shines brightly over the sprawling city, a peaceful contrast to the secret investigation that has just been launched against Jinwoo. The world continues on as if nothing changed. Jinwoo stops to buy a snack, handing a golden brown bun to his tiny companion. It's the least he can do after making her stay quiet for so long. Ramba's eyes light up with joy as she prepares to dig in. Jinwoo comments on how it must have been frustrating for her to keep her mouth shut during the entire fight. He gives her a soft smile, amused by how simple her happiness is. As long as there's good food, she seems perfectly content. Ramba hugs the massive bun with a look of pure bliss, and Jinwoo thinks about how lucky he is that his summon is so easy to manage compared to others. It's one less thing to worry about. His expression shifts back to concern as he wonders if his intervention today will lead to any long-term consequences. He really didn't want to draw any attention to himself. He thinks back to the blood orc attack, acknowledging that he hadn't planned on getting involved until he saw the players struggling with basic mechanics. It was hard to just sit there and watch. He knows that without his tip, the outcome for everyone in that cafe could have been tragic. Sometimes even he can't ignore a disaster waiting to happen. Sitting on a park bench, Jinwoo takes a deep breath and admits to himself that the world has changed far more than he ever expected. He's going to need more than just knowledge to survive. He stares ahead with a sharp, determined gaze, deciding that he can no longer afford to stay on the sidelines. It's time for him to start hunting for real. The preparation stage is over. He begins planning his next moves, focusing on gathering summoning scrolls to build a proper team. His first target is the armor drill instructor, Summon. Next on his list is the Explosion Dragon Mage, known as the Pacrian Sorcerer. Since they're only E and D rank units, he knows he can find them within low-grade scrolls if he's lucky. Nearby, Ramba lies on a small cloth, looking completely stuffed and content after a meal. She has no idea about the ambitious plans her master is currently making. Jinwoo stands up from the park bench, his gaze fixed on the urban skyline and the towering skyscrapers in the distance. Ramba jolts at the sudden movement, her small frame flinching as he breaks the silence with a single decisive word. Jinwoo turns with a confident smile, one hand resting on his hip as sunlight filters through the trees behind him. He asks his fairy companion if they should get moving. Finally ready to face the world heat-in, the camera pans over a cluster of high-rise glass buildings under a clear blue sky. A voice rings out in shock, cutting through the usual city bustle. Park Chang-ik is on the other end of the line, his jaw dropped as he listens to the report. He just found out that Beak Jinwoo spent the last 3 years in a coma after a car accident. He can't believe what he's hearing. He wonders if being bettered was the only reason a guy with this much talent remained an unregistered player until now. A flashback shows people standing in a town square surrounded by floating red banners as the world turned upside down. 3 years ago, everything humanity knew was replaced by a chaotic new reality. Back in the present, Park is so rattled he almost drops his phone and briefcase. The news that Jinwoo applied for registration immediately after being discharged is completely unheard of. He pulls out the application form and stares at Jinwoo's photo. Every detail on the paper confirms that this kid isn't just lucky, he's an anomaly. Park realizes the gravity of the situation as he stares at the paperwork. To wake up and instantly adapt to a world filled with monsters and magic takes more than just guts. He stands frozen on the sidewalk while people walk past him. His colleague asks if everything is okay, but he's too deep in thought to give a real answer. He tells the person on the phone that he'll be taking over as the examiner for this round. He refuses to explain why, but it's clear he's found someone he needs to see in person. He hangs up the call, staring at his phone with a mixture of disbelief and excitement. The skyline of the city looms behind him, bright and indifferent. To Park, it's one thing to survive an accident, but it's another to register as a player the moment you open your eyes. That kind of adaptability is something you can't teach. A smirk tugs at the corner of his mouth as he looks at the screen. He's convinced that Jinwoo has the potential to become an extraordinary talent for the country. The scene shifts to the sleek interior of the Player Association headquarters. Modern architecture and bright spotlights give the place a high-stakes professional feel. A pair of polished dress shoes clicks against the floor as someone walks inside. Jinwoo has arrived, and he's clearly impressed by the scale of the facility. He knew it would be busy, but the sheer volume of applicants is still a lot to take in. Ramber is perched on his head, looking around with wide eyes at the competition. The hallway is packed with people waiting for their turn, the air buzzing with nervous energy. Everyone here is vying for a chance to officially join the ranks of players. Jin Woo passes a girl holding a small armored summon, both of them looking ready for a fight. He observes the crowd, realizing just how much people are willing to go through for this status. He finds a seat and gets comfortable, crossing his arms with a confident smirk. While everyone else looks stressed, he feels like he's just waiting for a game to start. The sound of heavy footsteps signals the arrival of the instructor. The noisy hall goes quiet in an instant as everyone turns their attention to the stage. Jin Woo looks up from his seat, noticing that things are finally getting underway. Rambus settles onto his hair, sensing that it's time to pay attention. His eyes go wide as he recognizes the man stepping up to the podium. It's the same guy he met before, and he didn't expect him to be the one running the show. Park Chang-ik stands tall before the crowd, introducing himself as the examiner for the headquarters. He announces that the pre-written exam training is officially starting. The scene cuts to a private sunlit room where the two of them are sitting alone. The tension from the auditorium is gone, replaced by a more personal atmosphere. Park laughs, calling their meeting a twist of fate. Jin Woo sits across from him, admitting he never would have guessed a high-ranking official would be his examiner. Park leans back with a grin and asks how the training session went. Jin Woo looks away, trying to figure out how to be honest without being rude. A screen in the background shows diagrams of summon combinations and strategy maps. This is the advanced curriculum being taught to the next generation of players. Jin Woo looks completely unimpressed, while Ramba has literally fallen asleep on his head. To them, this lesson is about as exciting as watching paint dry. Ramba snaps awake with a tiny yawn, looking just as bored as her master. She's clearly not finding any of this top-tier strategy very useful. Jin Woo realizes why everything felt so familiar. The government is teaching the exact same strategies he shared on game forums years ago. He can't believe they're using his old speedrun tactics as official study material. He forces a smile and tells Park that it wasn't bad, though he's secretly annoyed. Park looks relieved, glad to hear that his star recruit found the material acceptable. Park gets down to business, mentioning the reward application they discussed previously. He leans in closer, his expression turning serious. Before they move on to the rewards, he admits there's one thing he's been dying to ask. Jin Woo watches him closely, waiting for the catch. Park rests his chin on his hands, his eyes narrowing as he studies Jin Woo's reaction. He asks point blank if Jin Woo was ever a gamer in the past. Jin Woo looks confused, repeating the term as if he's never heard it used that way. He's trying to gauge exactly how much Park has figured out about his history. A hologram of a mobile game screen pops up, showing the Battle of Summoners login. In this world, being a gamer means you played the very game this reality is now based on. Park explains that nearly 3/4 of the top rankers in the country were gamers before the shift. He knows that anyone with that background has a massive head start in this new world. Jin Woo realizes it would be weirder if he knew all these specific summon buffs without having a background in the game. He decides to come clean, but only partially. Park looks validated, his eyes lighting up as he confirms his theory. He immediately asks the follow-up question. How long did Jin Woo actually play for? Jin Woo stares into the distance, carefully calculating his response. If he admits he was a 10-year veteran, he'll be put under a microscope that he's not ready for. Park waits for the answer, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple from attention. He's desperate for any edge he can get for the association. Jin Woo lies through his teeth, claiming he only played for about a year. Park's reaction is explosive as he lunges forward and grabs Jin Woo's hands in shock. Jin Woo blinks, completely caught off guard by the guy's level of excitement. He starts to wonder if a year was still too much, but for Park, he's just found a diamond in the rough. Jin Woo keeps a straight face as he repeats his one-year play history. Park's jaw practically hits the floor. To him, playing a dead game for that long is a massive achievement. Park is sweating as he processes the info. Most Korean rankers barely put in 6 months, so a full year of experience makes Jin Woo a walking encyclopedia in his eyes. He clears his throat and regains his composure. He tells Jin Woo that because of his expertise, they've prepared 2 exclusive reward options for him to choose from. Park holds up a finger, laying out the first offer with an air of importance. Using his authority, he can grant Jin Woo an immediate player registration, bypassing the usual red tape. He leans in, sweetening the deal even further. Not only would he get his license instantly, but he'd also be guaranteed a high position right at the association headquarters. Jin Woo just leans his head on his hand, looking completely unimpressed. To anyone else, this is a dream offer, but he seems to be thinking of something else entirely. Park moves on to the second option, which is a straightforward cash reward of 5 million won. He claps his hands together, expecting Jin Woo to struggle with the obvious choice of a government career. He gives a small, confident smile, certain that no one in their right mind would pick a bit of cash over a prestigious job. He emphasizes that getting into headquarters is harder than landing a gig at a major corporation. Before Park can even finish his pitch, Jin Woo interrupts him with a deadpan expression. He chooses the money without a second thought, leaving the examiner completely speechless. Park's head practically spins in a cartoonish daze as he stammers out a response. He tries to warn Jin Woo that normal player registration is a long, grueling process that he could skip right now. Jin Woo stands up and rests his hand on the table, looking determined to stick to his choice. He politely thanks Park for the concern, but insists he'll handle the registration on his own terms. He slings his bag over his shoulder and heads for the door. Looking back one last time, he tells Park he doesn't want to be tied down at headquarters when he's already busy hunting for new summons. The scene shifts to the play zone entrance where a swirling blue portal stands ready. A crowd of officials and guards watches as Jin Woo prepares to take the practical exam. The instructor confirms Jin Woo's identity as he approaches the gate. Tiago, the hairy gorilla summon, stands loyally by his side, looking just as bored as his master. A woman in a suit explains the rules of the day of the week dungeon. Since it's Tuesday, he'll be entering a time attack trial where speed is everything. From a distance, Park watches Jin Woo's back as he walks toward the shimmering light. He's still reeling from the fact that someone actually turned down his golden ticket. He stands with his arms crossed, his brow furrowed in confusion. He just can't wrap his head around why an unregistered player would prefer a small pile of cash over national support. His gaze sharpens as he focuses on Jin Woo's calm demeanor. There's something about the kid's confidence that makes him wonder if there's more to this than just a lack of ambition. In another room, technical analysts are staring a stack of documents in disbelief. They're shouting that the insights in Jin Woo's pre-exam papers are absolutely insane. A man with glasses is practically weeping with joy as he clutches the reports. He's never seen anyone with such a deep understanding of runes and summons, claiming that Korea has finally found a true national treasure. Park looks on sweating as he hears the expert's high praise. He realizes that if Jin Woo performs as well as he writes, he could easily break into the national rankings. Park bites his thumb, the gears in his head turning as he second-guesses his earlier negotiation. He wonders if his offer was actually too low for a talent of this caliber. Back at the portal, the instructor gives the final word that the explanation is over. She gestures for Jin Woo to enter the dungeon and begin his trial. Jin Woo takes a firm step forward, his sneakers clicking against the pavement. The portal hums with energy, ready to transport him into the maze. He steps through the light and finds himself at the entrance of a dark, stone-walled labyrinth. Rama floats beside him, looking ready for action. As the clock starts ticking, a wave of energy pulses through the air as the dungeon activates. Bright blue lines of code and mana flicker around them, signaling the start of the time attack. Jin Woo stands composed, surrounded by a glowing aura of light. Yahello squats beside him, his eyes glowing yellow as he prepares to unleash his power. A system window pops up with a warning. The room is crawling with highly toxic slimes. The goal is simple: defeat the monsters and find the exit as fast as possible. Jin Woo doesn't waste a second and calls out to Ramba. She cheers back, spinning her staff to start stacking buffs on their gorilla companion immediately. Tiago lets out a primal roar as green aura wraps around his massive frame. Multiple speed and attack stacks appear over his head, turning the slow summon into a high-speed wrecking ball. The screen explains the layout of the Tuesday dungeon, which is essentially a massive, confusing maze. Purple crown-wearing slimes lurk in the shadows, waiting for unsuspecting players. A cartoon graphic shows a beginner player looking lost and crying while a timeout alarm blar. Most people fail this exam because they spend all their time wandering in circles instead of fighting. Jin Woo just gives a cold smirk as he looks into the darkness of the maze. To him, this isn't a challenge. It's a speed run he's done 1,000 times before. Ramba points forward, leading the charge as Jin Woo commands them to ignore the slow slimes and keep moving straight. They dash past the toxic blobs without letting them land a single hit. Jin Woo thinks to himself that he's been through this dungeon so many times in the game that he could navigate it blindfolded. Finding the way out isn't even a concern for him. He spots a specific archway and points it out to his team. This is the shortcut he was looking for, one that cuts through the longest section of the maze. He leaps through the gap with a burst of speed, his coat fluttering behind him. He knows that taking this path will lead them straight to the heart of the dungeon. A bright red warning screen flashes across his vision. The boss monster appears. A piercing alarm echoes through the stone chamber. As the floor begins to tremble, Jin Woo's expression turns predatory as he stares into the dark pit where the boss is hiding. He mentions that it's been a while since he's seen this thing in person, and he's more than ready to take it down. An enormous gelatinous mass rises from the ground, dwarfing Jin Woo and his summons. The giant slime wears a jagged crown, its glowing blue eyes fixed on the intruders as it prepares to defend its territory. Big Jin Woo smiles as he looks up. It's finally time for a real showdown with the boss. The great slime looms over them, a massive mountain of purple goo wearing a tiny crown. Jin Woo stands his ground, flanked by Ramba and his gorilla summon Tiago. Jin Woo gives a command to go all out. Ramba spins around with her staff, casting a swirling green buff as Tiago lets out a deafening roar that shakes the dungeon walls. The buffed-up gorilla leaps into the air. Tiago winds up a massive fist, glowing with the energy Ramba provided. The punch connects with a massive boom, sending slime splashing everywhere. The force of the impact craters the ground beneath the boss. Tiago doesn't stop, unleashing a flurry of punches so fast they're a blur. Jin Woo watches with a smirk, knowing that Ramba's speed buff is basically a cheat code. Jin Woo crosses his arms, impressed by the carnage. Even an F-class summon becomes a beast when their attack speed is cranked up this high. The battle is over in a flash, and Tiago beats his chest in victory. While Ramba cheers, Jin Woo gives them a satisfied nod for a job well done. A blue system window pops up, confirming the boss monster has been defeated. Jin Woo looks back, slightly surprised by how quickly the notification appeared. The clear time is 5 minutes and 32 seconds. To Jin Woo, this feels incredibly slow compared to his old gaming days when he could clear it in under a minute. But then more windows pop up. He's just shattered the South Korean record. A special achievement notification flashes across his vision. Jin Woo stares in disbelief as rewards start pouring in. He just earned 3 advanced summoning scrolls for his effort. The loot keeps coming with 2 low-grade abrasives added to his inventory. He starts breaking into a cold sweat as the reality of what he just did sinks in. He can't believe that time is considered the best in the country. The bar in this world is way lower than he expected. Cut to the association monitoring room, where feathers of light seem to drift through the air. The peace is shattered when Ujaya spots something impossible on her screen. Ujaya shouts for her superior to come over, pointing frantically at the new data. The rankings for the Tuesday dungeon have just been turned upside down. Headquarters agent A rushes over, his jaw dropping at the screen. He can't believe a new record of 5 minutes and 32 seconds was just set. Jaya is stunned by the massive time cut. She wonders if a pro like Kong Jinho found a new secret strategy. The system pulls up the player's profile, and the name Beak Jin Woo flashes on the monitor. They've never seen this guy before. The agents look at each other in confusion. This new record breaker isn't even a registered ranker. They can't wrap their heads around it. An unknown player just took down the record of the #1 ranked professional. The news reaches the upper levels of the association. Jin Woo's face is plastered on the big screen in the high-stakes meeting room. Ujaya stands by completely dazed by the situation. She whispers that this man is truly incredible. Park Chang-duk sits at the head of the table, a mysterious smile playing on his face. He knows exactly what this means for their country. Park leans forward, declaring Jin Woo to be the real deal. He calls him a national treasure that they can't afford to lose. The congressman slams his hand on the table to emphasize his point. He's determined to secure Jin Woo at any cost. He warns the room that they must prevent him from leaving for another country. If South Korea wants to survive, they need talent like this. Park orders his staff to register Jin Woo as a player immediately. The other officials are taken aback, wondering if they should skip the usual matches. A ranking board shows how far ahead Jin Woo is compared to the rest of the nation. Time attacks are split into domestic and global categories, and he's just topped the first list. The previous top player in Korea, Kong Jinho, is now in second place with a time over 6 minutes. His silhouette fades into the background as his record is overtaken, but the global stage is a different story. The world's top player, Rachel, holds the first place spot with a staggering time of just over 2 minutes. Jin Woo's image appears next to his summons as the association debates his potential. Surpassing the national record as a non-ranker makes a standard test seem pointless. Park argues that someone with this much talent deserves special treatment. He's not going to let bureaucracy slow them down. Later that day, outside the massive association building, the sky is clear and bright. A deep sigh of relief echoes through the air. Jin-woo is walking away, still processing the news. He's genuinely confused that a 5-minute clear was enough to break a national record. Suddenly, someone calls out his name from behind. Jin-woo stops and looks back as a man rushes toward him. It's Park Chang-ik running with a huge grin and his arm raised. He shouts that he's been dying to meet the man who just made history. The congressman sprints across the pavement, sweating from the effort. He's clearly moved by the data he saw earlier. He catches his breath and tells Jin-woo how incredible that record-breaking run was. He's dying to know how he managed to do it in one single attempt. Jin-woo scratches his cheek, feeling a bit awkward about all the praise. To him, it felt as natural as a fish swimming in water. Park quickly reaches into his pocket and pulls something out. He tells Jin-woo he needs to take this right away. Jin-woo looks down at the card in his hand. It's an official player license. He's been fast-tracked and registered as a professional player on the spot. Park Chang-ik hands over the license, telling Jin-woo there's no more doubt about his skills. Jin-woo looks at his new ID, satisfied that things are moving along. The congressman then gets straight to the point, asking exactly how Jin-woo managed to break the record. Jin-woo keeps his eyes on the card, already calculating his response. Jin-woo lets out a small, non-committal sound as he thinks. He knows his response will determine how the government treats him from here on out. He grips the license tight, staring at his own photo. He knows that if he spills his secrets now, the power balance in the country would shift overnight. Jin-woo envisions a best-case scenario where he's treated like royalty. Sitting on a golden throne with money falling from the sky, he'd have all the wealth and honor he could ever want. But then he thinks of the worst-case scenario. He imagines being kidnapped and tied to a chair with the government trying to squeeze every bit of information out of his head. Jin-woo narrows his eyes, deciding that total honesty might be a death sentence. He needs to play this smart to stay in control. He looks Park right in the eye and calls him out for being rude. The congressman looks taken aback, a bead of sweat rolling down his face as the tension rises. Park immediately lowers his gaze and apologizes for overstepping. He realizes he can't treat Jin-woo like a typical rookie player. He clenches his fist, explaining that sharing a gamer's strategy is a huge deal among top players. He knows he's asking for a trade secret. Park looks desperate as he pleads with Jin-woo to understand the situation. He explains that South Korea is currently starved for top-tier talent to compete globally. Jin-woo watches him closely, judging the man's character. He decides that Park doesn't seem like the type of person who would stab him in the back. He remembers that Park was quick to wire the reward money without any hassle. The guy is efficient and seems to have a decent personality for a politician. Jin-woo's lips curl into a slight smirk. As a new plan forms, he thinks that if he plays his cards right, he can use the country's resources to level up faster than ever. The two stand on the street as the conversation shifts. Park suggests they find somewhere more private and official to talk things through. They move to a sleek, modern office space overlooking the city. The atmosphere is much more professional. As they settle in to talk business, Park sits across from Jin-woo and gets right to the point. He bluntly asks for Jin-woo's full cooperation with the association. He explains that the headquarters is in dire need of the specialized knowledge Jin-woo possesses. Jin-woo listens in silence, looking completely unfazed. Jin-woo leans back and asks if they've already done a background check on him. His expression is sharp, letting Park know he's aware of their digging. Park looks a bit embarrassed but tries to justify it. He explains that any skilled, unregistered player is viewed as a potential security threat or even a gang member. Jin-woo crosses his arms and stares him down, looking genuinely annoyed. He tells Park in no uncertain terms to never let it happen again. Park breaks into a sweat, surprised by Jin-woo's intensity. He's used to people being intimidated by the state, but this kid doesn't show a single hint of fear. Jin-woo casually takes a sip of his coffee. Acting like he's the one in charge of the room, Park realizes that the young man knows exactly how much leverage he holds. Jin-woo sets his cup down and asks what's in it for him. He wants to know the tangible benefits of helping the country. He asks about cooperation as if the word itself is questionable. Park looks a bit stunned, realizing Jin-woo isn't going to be easily bought with empty words. Park laughs, trying to lighten the mood, while admitting he holds a very high position in the association. He wants Jin-woo to know he has the power to follow through on his promises. He explains the political side of his job, showing a graphic of him on a podium. If he produces good results with Jin-woo, He gets more votes and more power to help. Jin Woo gives him a dull, unimpressed look. He realizes he's just dealing with a typical ambitious politician. Park clenches his hands on the desk, looking more serious than ever. He promises to provide every bit of support his authority allows. Park repeats his offer, emphasizing that his resources are now at Jin Woo's disposal. He's putting all his chips on this one player. Jin Woo narrows his eyes, thinking the offer is a bit too vague. Since Park is a civil servant, he knows there are limits to how much cash he can just throw around. Jin Woo taps his finger on the table, thinking it over. He finally tells Park that he has a specific condition in mind. He proposes a trial period of exactly 1 month. Park is visibly confused by the short time frame, asking for clarification. Jin Woo explains he'll focus on his own growth for a month and request help when he needs it. He wants to see if the association is actually useful to him first. If he's satisfied, they'll keep going. If not, he'll walk away. He even offers to return whatever resources he used or provide equivalent info if they part ways. Park can't help but smile at the sheer audacity of the kid. He realizes Jin Woo is essentially asking for a Heil secretary for a month. The congressman taps the table, accepting the terms with a smirk. He knows it's an audacious request, but he has no other choice. He thinks to himself that even if it's just for a month, there's a lot he can gain by staying close to Jin Woo. The potential payoff is just too big to pass up. They both reach out and shake on it, finalizing their one-mon agreement. The god of the old game has officially begun his climb in the new world. A little bit of exposure didn't bother him at all. Jin Woo says his goodbyes and heads for the door. Outside, the city is bright and busy, a complete contrast to the quiet office he just left. As he walks away, Jin Woo pulls out his phone. He smirks to himself, satisfied that he's successfully secured the congressman's silence for now. He stops for a moment to check the loot he picked up earlier. A small smile plays on his lips as he prepares to see what he's earned. He swipes his hand across the air, bringing up a glowing holographic interface. The blue light reflects off his eyes as he scrolls through his inventory. The reward screen pops up, showing 3 high-grade summoning scrolls and 2 low-grade abrasives. Jin Woo stares at the items, surprised by the quality of the haul. He stands in the dark room, the blue screen casting long shadows behind him. It makes sense. A first-time achievement reward like this should be something special. Jin Woo taps his chin, weighing his options. Part of him wants to use the scrolls right now, but gambling with only 3 feels like a waste when he could sell them for a guaranteed profit. He pauses, his eyes widening as a new idea strikes him. Something about the market, just click. He pulls up the Player Web app, the exclusive marketplace for registered hunters. This is where all the high-stakes item trading happens. He remembers Park Chang-ik, congressman, giving him a glowing recommendation for a specific trade station while setting up the app. It seems like the right place to start. Jin Woo taps on the Announcements tab to check the current market rates. He holds his breath, waiting for the list to load. He stares at the screen, frozen. He can't believe what he's looking at. His eyes go wide as he processes the numbers. The shock is written all over his face. The screen lists a single high-grade summoning scroll at 3,000,001. Jin Woo's hand shakes slightly as he looks at the 5,001 price tag for a low-grade scroll below it. Jin Woo clutches his head, trying to do the math. He just made 9,000,001 in a 5-minute dungeon run. It's absolutely insane. He stares at the phone, his face heating up as he thinks about the possibilities. If he keeps this up, the money is going to start piling up fast. He imagines Dad, Mom, and Beak Ajin crying with relief as they're surrounded by stacks of cash. He clenches his fist, determined to make sure his family never has to worry about money again. He starts planning his next move, tapping his chin thoughtfully. Since he already has top-tier summons like the drill instructor, he can afford to sell the high grades and buy a massive amount of low-grade scrolls instead. He looks at the 3 high-grade summoning scrolls sitting in his inventory one last time. There is ticket to a much larger game. He goes back to the market listings, but something catches his eye. He stops mid-scrolls, squinting at the screen. The price for low-grade scrolls is stuck at 5,001, despite there being way more sellers than buyers. It doesn't make any sense. He decides he needs some expert advice. He starts dialing a number, hoping to get some answers about how this economy actually works. He puts the phone to his ear and waits. "Hello," he asks as soon as the line connects. On the other end, Beak Ajin is relaxing on the couch with a book. She sounds surprised to hear from him, asking what's up. Jin Woo starts laying out his questions about the scroll market. He needs her to explain the weird price floor he's seeing on the app. Ajin smiles, happy to help her brother out. She explains that the reason the price stays at 5,001 is because the headquarters buys them all up. Jin Woo looks confused, asking why on earth the headquarters would want to do that. It seems like a massive waste of resources. Ajin flops back onto the couch, explaining that they use tax money to buy them in bulk at a fixed price. It's a policy meant to support low-rank hunters so they can at least make a living. An infographic shows money raining down on a happy hunter. She notes that because the headquarters is a guaranteed buyer, nobody ever bothers to lower their price below 5,000. Jinwoo listens, still trying to wrap his head around the logic. What? Why though? He asks, needing more details. Ajin says it's a holdover from the early days of the system. Even though the headquarters doesn't need them and they're just piling up in storage, the policy stays in place. Jinwoo nods, finally getting the picture. He thanks her for the info and hangs up the phone, a new plan already forming. He looks at his phone's blank screen, his reflection staring back. If low-grade scrolls are that common, and the headquarters is desperate to get rid of them, he's found his opening. The scene shifts to a luxuriously appointed office. The atmosphere is quiet and professional, waiting for the next move. Park Chan-gyo, congressman, lets out a booming laugh, his face lighting up with a wide grin. He enthusiastically welcomes Jinwoo back into the room. Park Chang-gik, congressman, lets out a big laugh, leaning back as he teases Jinwoo for coming back to see him so soon. Jinwoo just sits there with a flat look on his face, waiting for the old man to finish. The congressman clasps his hands on the desk, his expression turning a bit more professional. He asks Jinwoo if he happens to need something specific. Jinwoo gets straight to the point. He wants to get his hands on some low-grade summoning scrolls. Park Chang-gak congressman looks genuinely surprised, wondering why he isn't asking for intermediate or high-grade ones instead. When asked how many he needs, Jinwoo doesn't hesitate. He tells the congressman he wants as many as he can possibly get his hands on. Park Chang-gik, congressman, rests his chin on his hand, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. He thinks to himself that since 50,000 of them come in every single day, giving them away isn't exactly a problem. He warns Jinwoo that he can provide them, but only if they aren't meant for resale on the market. Jinwoo quickly shuts that down, explaining that since the market is already flooded with them, he just plans on using them himself. The congressman narrows his eyes, watching Jinwoo closely. He's starting to realize that the young man definitely has a specific plan in mind for all those scrolls. Jinwoo sits there with a composed, neutral look while the congressman analyzes him. Park Chang-gyeok thinks to himself that Jinwoo really is a different kind of gamer compared to everyone else. The congressman agrees to the request, but raises a finger to signal a condition. Jinwoo's interest is piqued as a small chibi version of him pops up with a question mark. Park Chang-gik, congressman, leans in asking for just a single piece of useful information in exchange for the scrolls. He's looking for a fair trade that benefits both of them. He explains the stakes. Since he's an elected official, just giving away items bought with tax money would destroy the public's trust in him. He needs something to show for it to cover his tracks. Jinwoo's face is reflected in the dark surface of his coffee. As the congressman continues his pitch, he needs some kind of insurance to protect his own position while helping Jinwoo out. Jinwoo lets out a small smirk, thinking that this arrangement actually works in his favor. If he provides decent information, he knows the congressman will treat him accordingly in the future. He settles back into his chair and gives a simple nod of agreement. He's ready to play the game on the congressman's terms. Jinwoo raises a finger as he starts his explanation. He tells the congressman about a technique he calls shaving seconds off achievements. A small chibai congressman looks completely lost, a bead of sweat on his head. The concept of speedrunning achievements is clearly new to him. An infographic pops up showing a chibai congressman celebrating a dungeon clear at 6 minutes and 20 seconds. It lists the reward as 3 high-grade summoning scrolls for taking the top spot domestically. The graphic changes to show Chibai Jinwoo standing on a first-place pedestal with a faster time of 5 minutes and 32 seconds. He explains that if another player breaks that record later, they can also earn those same rewards. He illustrates the idea as a relay race where players take turns breaking the record by only a single second each time. This way, the maximum number of people can claim the rewards before the time becomes impossible to beat. A massive stack of gold scrolls appears as Jinwoo notes that this method also significantly boosts South Korea's national power. It's a win-win strategy for the whole country. Park Chang-gik, congressman, rubs his chin thoughtfully, admitting that they've actually tried a similar method themselves. However, he points out that the current top rankers have only managed to receive the reward once each. Jinwoo points out that since there are still so many players who haven't even received the reward once, his plan won't cause any real issues. He's confident in his logic. The light catches Jinwoo's eye as he prepares to drop the big secret. He tells the congressman that the information he's releasing is specifically for the Tuesday dungeon. Park Chang-ik, congressman, claps his hands together loudly, satisfied that his suspicions were right. He's clearly excited to hear what Jin-woo has found. The congressman leans in with sparkling eyes, looking like a kid in a candy store. Jin-woo thinks to himself that the man wouldn't believe it, even if he told him the truth about just memorizing the mazes. Jin-woo guarantees that with this method, anyone will be able to clear the dungeon in the 3-minute range. The congressman's jaw drops. He's completely stunned by that claim. Jin-woo holds up a hand to stop the old man's excitement before it goes too far. He tells him that before they get into the details, they need to settle on the price. He lays out his demands along with the low-grade scrolls. He wants 50 high-grade summoning scrolls. He watches the congressman's reaction closely as he names his price. Park Chang-ik was stunned, his head spinning as he processed that price. He nearly choked when Jin-woo proposed a figure as high as 150 million won. Jin-woo leans back, crossing his arms with a confident look. He argues that his price is actually a bargain considering the rewards from his method can easily reach into the billions. Park Chang-ik, congressman, laughs as he addresses the group. Standing tall in the fatting light, he tells them he's called them in because he has something very important he wants to test out. One of the men smirks, nodding that the congressman wouldn't gather them all for just any ordinary experiment. They're all curious to see what he's got up his sleeve. The congressman asks if they've heard about the Tuesday dungeon record being shattered recently. One of the men nods, remembering the name Beak Jin-woo being all over the news. A chibi version of the congressman excitedly tells the group that he's managed to get his hands on a top-tier strategy from overseas. He mentions that he even tested it with Jin-woo himself, and the results were incredible. The men look at each other, stunned by the news. They ask if it's really true, finally understanding why he told them not to spread the word around. Park Chang-ik congressman gives a simple, confident nod. He's ready to show them exactly how it's done. Park Chang-ik congressman stands confidently in front of his people, the sunset glowing behind him. He declares that from now on they're going to totally crush the Tuesday dungeon. In a flash of blue light, a new summoned beast appears. It's a small blue and yellow lizard with a long tail, identified as the key to clearing the dungeon. The congressman's subordinates look on in confusion. One of them asks if the little creature is just a spotted Komodo. On-screen text explains that the spotted Komodo is a monitor lizard type summoned roughly the size of a human adult. It's typically categorized as a versatile unit capable of both tanking and dealing damage. A status window displays the B-spotted Komodo with a height of 170 centimeters. It reiterates its role as a balanced fighter in the dungeon. In a flashback, Jin-woo stares down at a tiny, unimpressive version of a lizard. He thinks to himself that it's a total dud, especially since its ambiguous stats usually make it a poor choice compared to other B-grade summons. The spotted Komodo's foot splashes into a pool of water with a heavy thud. Despite its reputation, it seems the users didn't know one crucial detail about its biology. A chibi spotted Komodo happily munches on a giant dead blue slime. Its main source of food is giant slimes, which just happen to be the primary obstacle in the Tuesday dungeon. The scene shifts to the exterior of a massive modern office building as the sun dips below the horizon. The deal with the congressman is already starting to pay off. System alerts chime as the national records for the lower-level Tuesday dungeon are repeatedly broken. Park Chan-ik's clear time drops from 5 minutes and 31 seconds down to 5 minutes and 29 seconds. The congressman's subordinates are ecstatic, their faces flushed as they pump their fists. They reach the boss room in record time, proving the effectiveness of the strategy. The team celebrates by tossing a little spotted Komodo into the air like a hero. Park Chang-ik, congressman, watches with a satisfied grin, knowing this summon is a real moneymaker. Standing over his desk, the congressman spreads out several personnel files. He points at the documents, deciding that these 3 individuals will be the perfect fit for the task. Close-ups of the 3 selected resumes are shown, featuring 2 men and 1 woman. Each one has been carefully chosen to handle the unique needs of their star player. The focus shifts to an outdoor park area on a bright sunny day. The sky is clear and the atmosphere is peaceful. Jin-woo stares at his smartphone screen, his hand shaking slightly. His bank account balance has skyrocketed to over 167 million won. He's completely floored by how easy it is to make money in this world. Beside him, Rambo Windfairy is just as shocked, wondering out loud how much cream bread that kind of cash can buy. Jin-woo sits at a table with a laptop, a blue glow reflecting off his face. Despite his recent windfall, he hasn't forgotten his main goal. He opens his system inventory, which shows a staggering count of 10,000 low-grade summoning scrolls. These were delivered by a headquarters employee earlier that morning as part of the deal. A confident smirk spreads across Jin Woo's face. The congressman kept his end of the bargain, and now it's time for Jin Woo to get to work. He reaches for a bottle of water, twisting the cap off with a crisp click. He needs to stay focused for what comes next. Jin Woo looks over at Rambo Wind Fairy, who is fluttering nearby with a determined expression. He asks her if she's ready to begin. He pours a steady stream of water onto the dry ground. It's a ritual he's performed countless times before, a habit from his earlier days of summoning. Ramba claps her hands together and starts praying fervently to every deity she can think of. She begs for Jin Woo to finally pull a powerful summoned beast from the massive pile of scrolls. Jin Woo holds up a single scroll, which glows with an intense blue light. He's ready to dive into the long process of mass summoning. With a sharp rip, he tears the red scroll open. He knows this is only the beginning of a grueling, endless grind. Sometime later, Jin Woo lies flat on his back, surrounded by a mountain of low-level F-grade summons. Bunnies, bats, and slimes crawl all over him as he gasps for air. Sweat pours down Jin Woo's face as he stares up at the sky, his mouth hanging open in exhaustion. He's gone through 3,600 scrolls in a single hour and found nothing but garbage. Rambo Wind Fairy hovers above him, poking his cheek with a tiny scolding finger. She doesn't seem to have much sympathy for his plight. She scolds him, asking if he really thought an X-grade summon would just pop out so easily. She reminds him that his luck was already spent when he summoned her on his very first try. Ramba continued to snap at him, shouting that her appearing on the first try was nothing but pure luck. He stood up, brushing off the dust as the summons vanished in flashes of light. He pauses, looking confused as Ramba mentions the summoning system. He admits he has no idea what she's talking about. Ramba sighs, looking at him like he's a hopeless emitter. She asks him if he really knows absolutely nothing about how the summoning mechanics actually work. An infographic appears illustrating that there are exactly 10% as many summoned beasts as there are human players. With 8 billion people, that means there are over 800 million of those common horn caterpillars he keeps pulling. Ramba points her finger right between Jin Woo's eyes. As she explains the catch, there's one very important detail he's missing. She explains that because they're currently under quarantine, there's only one specific individual of each type available. She strikes a pose, lecturing him on the rarity of certain summons. Beak Jin Woo is completely taken aback, shouting out in disbelief. Ramba Wind Fairy shakes her head with a resigned expression, admitting that even she doesn't know the reason for his unique ability. Ramba clarifies that Jin Woo is the only person capable of pulling quarantined X-grade summons. Jin Woo's face goes pale as he processes the staggering numbers involved. Tens of thousands of beast types, each with hundreds of millions of individuals in the pool. A close-up of Jin Woo's eye reveals the sheer mathematical impossibility of his task, with a 0.00001% probability reflected in his pupil. He realizes he has to somehow draw the one and only X-grade from an ocean of nearly a billion common summons. Overwhelmed by the odds, Jin Woo collapses onto the ground in the middle of the park, looking utterly defeated. Rambo Wind Fairy hovers beside him, trying to put things into perspective by nodding that winning the lottery multiple times in a row would probably be easier. In a chibi-style moment of comfort, Ramba hugs Jin Woo's shoulder and tells him not to lose heart just yet. She explains a key mechanic of the system. Once a summoned beast is pulled, it stays out of the pool until it is sold or discarded. A diagram illustrates her point, showing a massive pile of horned caterpillars with the final one, the 800 millionth, appearing at the top. She explains that if every single one of a specific type is summoned, they will never appear in future pulls again. Despite the explanation, Jin Woo remains slumped over, his head hanging low as he mutters that the task is still impossibly difficult. Rambo Wind Fairy floats silently near his ear, letting him process the scale of the grind ahead. A sharp close-up of Jin Woo's eye shows a spark of calculation. Returning to his gaze, he contemplates whether he should switch tactics and start using mid-grade scrolls instead of the low-grade ones. Looking out at the quiet park around him, Jin Woo quickly dismisses the idea, concluding that mid-grade scrolls are far too inefficient. They are too expensive, and their scarcity in the market makes mass summoning with them impossible. Jin Woo stands tall, his hands clenched at his sides as he makes a final decision. He acknowledges that while the probability is astronomically low, he cannot afford to stop now. With a determined shout, Jinwoo grips a glowing blue scroll and tears it open with both hands, releasing a burst of magical energy. Behind him, Rambo Wind Fairy cheers him on, her wings fluttering with excitement as the grind resumes. The sun shines brightly over the sprawling city skyline as Jinwoo's desperate plea for a high-grade summon echoes through the air. In the corner, a tiny Ramba pumps her fist, rooting for him to succeed against all odds. As the sun sets over the city, things are finally starting to move. Big Jinwoo has spent the last 2 weeks in a brutal, soul-crushing grind, ripping through a staggering 140,000 low-grade summoning scrolls. The sheer repetition has turned him into a total zombie. He's currently crashed out in a cheap rental room. But Ramba isn't about to let him sleep in, floating over his head and demanding some cream bread. Jinwoo drags himself upright, knowing he's got to keep moving if he doesn't want to be a burden on his parents forever. Ramba doesn't care about the budget, though. She just wants her snack right this second. To make his next move, he heads over to the Synthesis Center, which used to be a fancy hotel back before the world went crazy. The place is packed with players all looking to boost their own summons. It still has that luxury vibe, but the famous buffet has long been replaced by high-tech synthesis pods. He grabs a number from the kiosk and settles in with the rest of the waiting crowd. Number 125. Looks like it's going to be a bit of a wait. Ramba is practically vibrating with nerves, lecturing him about not messing up the process. Finally, their number flashes on the electronic screen, and it's their turn to head in. They step into a futuristic room dominated by a massive, glowing blue magic circle. Jinwoo tells Ramba it's showtime. As she flies out toward the center of the platform, he pulls up the interface to start dumping the mountain of resources he's gathered. He registers Ramba as the base unit, ready to feed her the thousands of trash summons he's collected from those scrolls. He hits the yes button, confirming the sacrifice of a literal army of frank monsters. A whirlwind of magical energy erupts as the spirits of countless lizards and bats are absorbed into the fairy. The volume of sacrifices is so massive that even Jinwoo is blinded by the spectacle. After a final flash of light, the system confirms that the synthesis is complete. Ramba emerges looking more refined and glowing with power. Having jumped all the way to level 21, Jinwoo claps for her, though he's internally crying over the fact that 140,000 scrolls only got her this far. The little fairy is thrilled with the boost, flexing her tiny muscles and asking if she looks strong now. A few days later, the scene shifts to a massive corporate skyscraper downtown. Inside, an assistant is busy typing away, tracking their newest person of interest. He's reporting the latest developments to his boss, who's been keeping a very close eye on Jinwoo's progress. Congressman Park Chang-ik is leaning back at his desk, looking pretty satisfied with how his talent management project is going. He asks his secretary for a quick update on what the kid has been up to lately. The secretary informs him that Jinwoo hasn't slowed down at all. He's still just ripping through more summoning scrolls. Park is actually taken aback, wondering why he's still obsessed with the low-grade stuff. It turns out Jinwoo even asked if he could buy them at a discount, so he could get even more. The congressman realizes the kid is doubling down on a reinvestment strategy that no one else would have the patience for. He looks over the data, seeing a golden opportunity where others just see trash. His secretary is completely shocked when Park orders him to hand over the scrolls at half price. The politician just smirks, his wheels already turning on a much bigger play. He's already daydreaming about Jinwoo becoming a national hero. With himself standing right there as the man who discovered him in his head, he's already being cheered by a crowd for his incredible foresight. He slams his hand on the desk and tells his assistant to just stop worrying and follow orders. This is about more than just scrolls. It's about securing his political future. He makes it very clear that this special treatment stays strictly between them and their core team. Meanwhile, a quiet Park sets the stage for the next phase of his plan. Back to the grind. Jinwoo is sitting in a literal wasteland of shredded paper as he hits scroll number 1558. Rambo is absolutely losing it, begging to know how much longer they have to endure this tedious process. But Jinwoo just tells her they're doing this until they're both dead. Their bleak marathon is suddenly interrupted by the sound of firm footsteps approaching on the pavement. Jinwoo looks up from the mess, startled by a voice calling out a greeting to him. A woman in a sharp business suit introduces herself as Ujaya from headquarters, flashing a friendly, professional smile. Still a bit flustered by the visit, Jinwoo listens as she explains she's here regarding the matter of purchasing summoning scrolls he'd mentioned to the congressman. He's caught off guard by the sudden, personal follow-up, wondering if his request was actually taken seriously. Jair explains that the team reviewed his recent contributions and decided to take a meeting to discuss his request. She drops a bombshell. They're willing to give him the scrolls at half price as a special exception, sending Jinwoo into a chibi state of pure worship for the congressman. But she's not finished with the good news just yet, signaling there's even more support on the way. Because of his potential, the team is also granting him an additional 100 million won for talent management, leaving Jinwoo completely stunned. She reminds him to keep the deal hush-hush, and the two of them agree with some very enthusiastic secret agent energy. Before she heads off, she locks eyes with him, stressing that this special treatment is all about building a solid relationship between them. With her job done, she gives a polite nod and starts to head back, leaving Jinwoo to process his luck. Jinwoo and Ramba watch her go, still a bit dazed by the sudden influx of cash and resources. Feeling the pressure to prove he's worth the investment, Jinwoo grabs another scroll with newfound determination, aiming to pull an X rank to repay the favor. The hours bleed into each other as the sun sets and night falls over the park, but the tearing sound never stops. Ramba eventually collapses into the pile of red scraps, crying out his name in pure exhaustion as he continues the relentless ritual. Jinwoo is starting to feel the physical toll too, but he refuses to stop until they land the specific units. He's aiming for the drill instructor and the explosion dragon. All he gets is a white snake Frank, and Ramba is practically screaming at the sound of more paper ripping. He's well past 1,000 pulls at this point, but now he's doing it out of pure spite, refusing to be beaten by the system's low drop rates. He whispers a quick prayer and rips into the next scroll with everything he has left. Suddenly, a massive crackle of golden lightning erupts from his hands, blowing back the surrounding debris. Both Jinwoo and Ramba are blinded by the flash. Recognizing the unique effect of a legendary pull, the system notification confirms he's used a low-grade scroll, but the result is anything but common. Emerging from the flames of the summon is the X-rank Pakryang sorcerer, also known as the Explosion Dragon Mage, looking every bit the legendary hero. The two of them can't help but wail in relief and joy after finally breaking the streak of trash summons. Ramba is practically vibrating with excitement, while Jinwoo feels like he could finally rest in peace. But just as the fatigue starts to take over, he notices a spark in his eyes and catches himself. He tells a confused Ramba that they can't stop now because they've hit the drop MO, the fabled drop moment. In gaming lore, when one good thing drops, you have to keep pulling while the luck is still hot. He immediately rips another scroll with a frantic look in his eyes. Desperate to catch the next wave, his gamble pays off instantly as a second X-rank appears. The drill instructor, Chun Hyo-jin Woo, finally lets the tears flow for real, overwhelmed that his stubborn, soul-crushing grind actually worked out. Emerging from the light is a stern figure in a brown uniform, signaling that Jinwoo's team just got a massive power boost. He can't stop grinning, celebrating the fact that all those weeks of soul-crushing grinding finally paid off. It's the kind of high only a gacha player truly understands. But the luck doesn't stop there. Another summon appears right in front of him. It's the drill instructor, a serious-looking knight in dark plate armor who seems a bit confused about where he's just landed. Jinwoo is absolutely thrilled. He knows the true value of this guy isn't in his combat stats, but in what he can do for the rest of the team. See, the drill instructor is an absolute training fanatic. Behind that stoic knightly look is a man who lived for the burn and thinks everything can be solved with enough reps. His skills are specifically designed to push others to their limits. With his growth and charisma abilities, he can force other summons to train until they literally can't move. The real game changer is the instructor's skill. It unlocks the hidden potential of any summon he trains, greatly accelerating their growth and turning even weaklings into monsters. The potential is almost terrifying, imagining a tiny, delicate fairy like Ramba being forced into becoming a muscle-bound powerhouse. The instructor doesn't see a fairy, he sees a project. Jinwoo's eyes practically turn into hearts thinking about the stat boosts, but poor Ramba is sweating bullets in the background. She definitely didn't sign up for a gym membership. Jinwoo gives the new guy a casual wave, greeting him like an old friend from his past gaming days. The drill instructor freezes, staring at Jinwoo as if he's seeing a ghost. That wave and that familiar nickname start to ring some very specific bells. He realizes he's standing in front of the legendary Jin God. Jinwoo doesn't miss a beat, confirming his identity with a smug smile. The instructor doesn't even hesitate. He drops straight to one knee, the sound of his armor clanking against the pavement. He explains how he's been sealed away for reasons he doesn't even know, never thinking he'd have the chance to serve as Lord again. Jinwoo watches, realizing these summons really do remember him. With his head bowed in total respect, the knight pledges his loyalty once more. A figure steps forward, and a voice addresses someone as Lord Jinwoo. A girl grips her staff, visibly tense, and asks if it is truly him. Jinwoo listens, noting that it is the first time he has heard her voice in this world. She stands surrounded by flames, revealed as Paekryang, a dragon mage of isolated EX rank, with a sealed dragon within her heart. The power inside her manifests as fire spreading outward, her abilities tied to destructive bursts and a skill that grows stronger after defeating powerful enemies. Jinwoo stands within the heat of the flames, recognizing her immediately. He understands that her full potential depends on specific conditions, and recalls that he was the only one who had ever used her properly. Paekryang, now certain of his identity, reacts with clear emotion. She rushes forward and expresses how long she has been waiting. Jinwoo responds calmly, though slightly overwhelmed, and sets a condition: she must not speak openly around others and should address him simply as Jinwoo. Beside her stands Hunio, composed and observant, acknowledging Jinwoo's instruction. Paekryang follows suit, adjusting to his request. Jinwoo looks on, visibly tired, while the wind fairy hovers nearby in a similar state. The scene shifts to a quiet night as snow falls over the city. Jinwoo returns home and goes to rest. Inside a simple room, he lies on his bed, asleep. On the floor nearby, his summons gather. Hunio speaks first, noting how much time has passed. Paekryang responds, and the wind fairy joins in, confirming the same. They recognize each other from before, recalling that they were once summoned together, even if only briefly. The conversation turns serious. Hunio steps forward and states that their current strength is insufficient. No matter their past, they are not yet capable of properly supporting Jinwoo. He makes it clear that they must train continuously, even while Jinwoo rests. He begins assigning roles. Paekryang is instructed to focus on controlling her mana, with the intention of unlocking her potential later. She accepts without resistance. Then his attention shifts to the Wind Fairy. She reacts nervously as he assigns her physical training to improve her ability. Despite her reluctance, he pushes her to accept it, emphasizing that it is necessary if she wants to be useful. He gives a specific task and sets a high standard from the beginning. As she struggles, she calls out for help, but Hunio remains firm and pulls her away to begin training. Meanwhile, Jinwoo continues sleeping, unaware of what is happening. Morning arrives. The scene shifts to an office. A discussion is underway regarding the distribution of low-grade summoning scrolls. A man questions why additional scrolls cannot be provided. Jaya explains that a directive has been issued from headquarters, restricting their use. The man reacts with frustration, noting that the decision comes directly from higher authority and questioning why such attention is being given to something he considers minor. He grows more irritated upon learning that they are now required to submit detailed records of how the scrolls have been used. Jaya adds that the situation may be influenced by another examiner, suggesting that internal pressure is affecting these decisions. Changsik sits behind his desk while Jaya stands across from him. He expresses irritation, noting that a certain individual continues to oppose his decisions at every turn. Jaya asks what they should do, explaining that the necessary reports have already been prepared. If the Management Bureau stops supplying low-grade summoning scrolls, they will have nothing left to provide Jinwoo. Changsik's expression tightens as he realizes the timing. He had been preparing the next batch. Just then, his phone vibrates. Seeing the name, he reacts immediately. Jaya watches as he checks the message. Jinwoo states that he no longer needs low-grade scrolls and has already obtained what he wanted. Changsik processes this, then shifts his focus. Rather than the scrolls, he now considers another matter more urgent. He decides that he needs to settle things with the examiner involved in this situation. The scene shifts to a mountainous area near station. Jinwoo arrives and looks ahead, assessing his surroundings. This is his first time encountering a standard dungeon in reality. A system interface outlines the different types of dungeons: normal dungeons, daily dungeons, the Tower of Trials, and large-scale raid bosses. Each category has distinct characteristics. Daily dungeons provide consistent materials. The Tower of Trials offers extreme difficulty with high rewards, and raid bosses require coordinated group efforts. Everything else falls under normal dungeons, which appear unpredictably across locations. Jinwoo recalls that these were once simple stage selections in the game, but in reality, they manifest physically and must be approached directly. He checks his phone, briefly reviewing party recruitment listings, but decides against joining one. He has no intention of relying on others. Ahead of him, a blue portal swirls within a restricted area, monitored by personnel. These measures exist to prevent uncontrolled dungeon breaks, where monsters escape into the outside world. A staff member stops him and requests his player license. Jinwoo provides it without hesitation. After verification, he is cleared to proceed. With a steady expression, he steps forward and enters the portal. A flash of light transitions into darkness. Jinwoo regains his footing inside the dungeon, immediately sensing tension in the air. A surge of energy surrounds him as the environment stabilizes. The scene around him is already in motion. Weapons clash, and bursts of energy erupt as forces collide. Soldiers brace themselves behind defenses while monsters advance aggressively. The sky above is darkened with red energy, and the structure resembles a fortified stronghold under siege. Orcs charge forward in large numbers, while defenders on the walls prepare their counterattack, drawing bows and issuing urgent commands. Jinwoo observes the battlefield. This is not a simple encounter. It is a subjugation-type dungeon, already in progress. Orcs swarm the fortress walls, climbing up wooden ladders in waves. Arrows rain down from above, striking them with precision, some piercing through multiple bodies as blood spills across the battlefield. Up close, the clash is brutal. Weapons collide with force, soldiers struggle to hold their ground, and wounded fighters collapse as others call desperately for healers. Standing on the wall, Jinwoo looks down at the chaos. Unlike the game, this is no longer distant or detached. The weight of real combat is clear. He steadies himself, closing his eyes briefly before regaining focus. This is not the time to hesitate. He resolves to act the way he always has. A protective barrier forms around him as energy flows across its surface. His summons gather. Ramba hovers forward, signaling readiness. Pei Kriang stands beside Hunio, flames already beginning to rise around her. Jinwoo calls them into position, bringing together his core team. He begins issuing orders. Ramba immediately moves to enhance Hunio, increasing his attack speed. Pei Kriang prepares to provide range support, focusing her energy for sustained fire from the rear. Jinwoo then directs Min Kong toward the enemy's core target, the orc boss positioned at the rear of the formation. Min Kong leaps from the wall, crashing into the ground below with a heavy impact. The battlefield shakes as debris scatters outward. The strategy is straightforward. In this type of dungeon, defeating the leader ends the encounter. The giant orc raises its weapon and strikes, but Min Kong meets the attack head-on, blocking the blow. At the same time, the rest of the team advances. Ramba maintains her support, while Hunio cuts through multiple enemies with rapid, precise strikes. His movements carry enhanced speed and force, slicing through the advancing orcs. Jinwoo watches from above, recognizing immediately that their strength is far beyond what would normally be expected at this stage. Compared to earlier levels, Hunio alone is operating on a completely different scale. The fight begins to tilt quickly in their favor. Soldiers on the wall notice the shift, realizing that unexpected allies have joined the battle and that they are overwhelmingly strong. Below, Min Kong continues pushing forward, engaging the boss directly, while the Golden Fairy provides support, restoring damage sustained during the clash. Ramba maneuvers through the air, avoiding attacks while continuing her role, though Jinwoo quickly calls her out when she begins to lose focus. Hunio continues cutting down enemies without pause, maintaining pressure on the battlefield. Then Pei Kriang steps forward. Flames spiral tightly around her staff as she concentrates. With a controlled motion, she releases her power. A massive wave of fire erupts outward, forming the shape of a blazing dragon as it surges across the battlefield, consuming everything in its path. Flames surge across the battlefield, engulfing the advancing orcs. Their cries fade as the fire consumes them. Even the giant orc stands scorched within the blaze, struggling to endure. From within the chaos, Hunio moves. With a single precise strike, he cuts through the orc's neck. The head separates cleanly and falls, ending the fight. The massive body collapses, and the battlefield falls silent. The dungeon is cleared. Ramba reacts first, raising her fist in excitement. Pei Kriang stands nearby, visibly pleased as her growth is reflected through the system. Her level increases, along with her attributes. Hunio, composed as always, also advances, his abilities improving through the battle. Jinwoo looks over the results and quickly calculates the outcome. In just a few minutes, he has earned a significant amount of money along with a higher grade summoning scroll. The efficiency is undeniable. His summons gather, acknowledging their progress. He, however, is already thinking ahead. There's no time to slow down. If he continues at this pace, he can strengthen his summons while building resources simultaneously. Standing firm, he sets his direction clearly. He will keep moving forward, repeating this process without pause until he reaches the top again. The scene shifts to a corporate office. Chang-sik sits at his desk, silent, while Jaya questions the decision he has made. She points out the risk, reminding him that Jinwoo, despite his potential, is still unproven compared to established rankers. Before he can respond, the earlier confrontation comes into focus. Inside a meeting room, tension builds between Chang-sik and another examiner, Iamu. The discussion quickly escalates into open hostility. Iamu criticizes Chang-sik's record, pointing out that none of the talents he supported have ever reached the national level. Chang-sik remains silent at first, aware that Iamu's results speak for themselves. Still, he refuses to accept the criticism. He challenges him directly. The argument turns into a wager. Both agree to compare the talents they support, with the outcome determining not only reputation, but also a severe penalty for the loser. Despite attempts from others to calm the situation, neither side backs down. Back in the office, Jaya questions Chang-sik's judgment again, asking if he is truly willing to risk everything on Jinwoo. Chang-sik acknowledges the uncertainty. Jinwoo is still behind in experience, and the gap is real. But he chooses to believe in him. He explains that if properly supported, Jinwoo has the potential to deliver results beyond expectations. Before the discussion can continue, the door suddenly opens. An employee rushes in, visibly tense, holding a report. He announces urgent news about a player who has been rapidly clearing multiple dungeons alone in a short period of time. The room falls into silence as the implication becomes clear. Chang-sik reacts instantly, leaning forward in shock as the report is delivered. Jaya, caught off guard beside him, demands clarification. When the name is confirmed, her composure breaks. A player who registered only a month ago is now clearing Durang dungeons in under 5 minutes. Chang-sik's reaction shifts completely. He breaks into a grin, clearly satisfied, and celebrates the result, insisting that his judgment about Jinwoo was correct from the beginning. Jaya, though surprised, remains more restrained, still processing what this means. The scene shifts back to Jinwoo. He steps out of a dungeon portal calmly, already aware that this level of efficiency was expected. For him, this pace is simply the result of applying experience correctly. Later, in a quiet room, he reviews his earnings. The total has grown rapidly, reaching over 26 million won. Reflecting on the past few days, he realizes how quickly things have changed. In just 4 days, he has cleared around 160 dungeons. The income reflects that effort. He acknowledges the results with satisfaction, recognizing that this is the product of continuous effort. While his summons remind him indirectly that they were the ones doing the actual work, he remains focused on the outcome. He begins organizing his finances. He separates his earnings into categories: living expenses, family support, savings, and a dedicated account for reinvestment into his growth. A portion is set aside regularly, while the rest is reserved for strengthening his team. The shift is clear. He has gone from having almost nothing to generating stable income as a player. But money alone is not his goal. His focus returns to growth. After constant dungeon runs, his summons have all surpassed level 30. The next step is clear: runes and upgrades. To progress further, he needs better summons. He searches the market and quickly realizes the problem. Even mid-tier summons are extremely expensive, and higher ranks are practically unavailable. At this rate, his current resources would not be enough to compete through purchasing alone. He understands the system immediately. The low probability of obtaining strong summons naturally drives up their value. Instead of relying on the market, he decides on a different approach. He makes a call. Back at the office, an employee rushes in again, urgently reporting a new request from Jinwoo. Chang-sik reacts immediately, demanding to know the details. The report is brought directly to him, and he leans in to see what Jinwoo has asked for, realizing that whatever comes next may be just as significant as everything so far. A phone screen displays Jinwoo's message, an extensive list of summons he wants purchased. The staff member presents it, and the reaction is immediate. Chang-sik grabs the phone, stunned by the scale of the request. It is far beyond what would normally be approved. If headquarters were willing to fund something like this, they would already be operating at a much higher level. He questions what Jinwoo is offering in return. The answer shifts everything. Jinwoo is willing to share strategies for clearing daily dungeons at high speed. Not just one, but all of them. The room falls into a brief silence as the value of that information becomes clear. Chang-sik processes it quickly. This is not a small proposal. It is a direct exchange of knowledge that could impact the entire system. He acknowledges the scale of the offer and decides to take it to the director. Moments later, frustration erupts. His attempt is rejected. The director demands proof, either evidence of the method or a demonstration, before any approval can be granted. Chang-sik reacts sharply. Without the requested summons, proving the method becomes nearly impossible. The situation traps him in a cycle of refusal. He argues that if Jinwoo's information is genuine, it represents a major opportunity. Ignoring it would be a mistake. Still, the decision does not change. Jaya observes the exchange calmly. She points out that the deal itself is undervalued. The information Jinwoo is offering could be worth far more than what headquarters is willing to spend. Then she makes a decision. She offers to cover the cost herself. The others are caught off guard. Her background explains her confidence. She belongs to a powerful conglomerate family and has the resources to act independently. Unlike others, her interest is not limited to management or bureaucracy. She focuses on players themselves. Recently, Jinwoo has become the most interesting case. From her perspective, he stands out immediately. Despite being a beginner, he possesses knowledge far beyond his level and is already negotiating directly with institutions. Rather than treating him like a standard recruit, she proposes a different approach. Instead of fitting him into the existing system, she suggests building a dedicated structure around him, a one-person management model. By investing directly in him and supporting his growth, they could maximize both his potential and the returns. It is a bold strategy, but one that aligns with what she sees in him. When questioned about the financial risk, she dismisses the concern without hesitation. Resources are not the issue. What matters now is confirmation. She decides that before moving forward, she needs to meet Jinwoo again and evaluate him personally. Jinwoo arrives at a high-end restaurant, where staff greet him with courtesy. The arrangement feels deliberate. He recognizes that headquarters moved quickly after receiving his information, and this level of treatment reflects their interest. The setting itself stands out, far beyond ordinary standards. Service is attentive, and everything around him signals that he is being valued as an asset. As he takes in the atmosphere, a voice calls out to him. Across the table sits Jaya, composed and confident. Jinwoo recalls the background check he reviewed earlier, her influence, her family, and her position. The realization still feels unexpected. She greets him politely and clarifies that this meeting is not on behalf of headquarters. As they begin, she explains the situation directly. Despite internal efforts, further support from headquarters will not be possible. Too many opposing voices blocked the decision. Jinwoo accepts this calmly. From his perspective, it does not change his path. He is confident he can continue progressing on his own if necessary. But Jaya has come prepared with an alternative. She presents her proposal, forming a private management agency dedicated solely to him. The idea catches him off guard. She explains her reasoning. Unlike a government body, a private corporation can act decisively and pursue profit without restriction. With the right investment, his abilities and knowledge could be fully utilized. What she offers is not limited support, but full backing, resources, infrastructure, and freedom to grow. Jinwoo considers this carefully. What he needs most right now is access to capital and someone who recognizes the value of his information. From that perspective, her offer aligns perfectly. Jaya continues, stating that her group is willing to support whatever he requires. Her tone remains steady, confident in both her position and her judgment. He realizes there are few opportunities like this. She then adds another detail. She has already begun preparations. The summons he requested have been arranged, regardless of whether he signs the contract. This surprises him even more. She frames it simply as a gesture of goodwill. The scale of her commitment makes the situation clear. This is not a casual proposal. She is already investing in him. Jinwoo reacts with visible excitement, recognizing the advantage this gives him. The scene shifts. Baek Ajin walks along a dirt path, looking tired and slightly frustrated. She wonders why Jinwoo has been so busy lately. He has not been in contact, and she has heard that he even moved out. As she lifts her head, she spots something ahead and focuses on it, her curiosity rising. Jaya walks along the path, her presence calm and composed. A short distance behind, Ajin notices her and pauses, struck by how familiar she looks. After a moment of thinking, she recalls seeing that face online. When the realization hits, her expression changes. This is you, Jaya. She watches in disbelief as Jaya continues forward. The scene shifts to a wide, open training ground. Under the vast sky, Jinwoo's summons are in the middle of intense training. Hyuneo stands at the center, overseeing everything with a strict demeanor. Several summons struggle to keep up, visibly exhausted, but he continues pushing them, insisting they go beyond their limits. Just as the pressure builds, he suddenly senses something and signals everyone to stop. Jinwoo, wiping sweat from his face, turns and notices someone approaching. Jaya arrives. She greets him casually, observing that he has already been training since morning. He responds lightly, downplaying the intensity, while she studies the summons gathered around him, recognizing that this is how he is building his team. Jinwoo gestures for them to continue training, postponing introductions. Jaya steps forward and raises her hand slightly. A faint glow gathers, and a system interface appears in front of Jinwoo. It is a trade request. The panel displays a list of summons on her side, everything he had asked for. His side is empty. He takes a moment, confirming that she has truly prepared everything. The system warns of the seriousness of such trades, emphasizing that agreements are binding and cannot be abused. Jinwoo understands and accepts the terms without hesitation. He confirms the trade. Blue light surrounds him briefly as the exchange completes. Lowering his head, he thanks her sincerely, acknowledging the scale of what she has given him. She brushes it off, treating it as a natural step. Without delay, she moves to the next matter. She takes out a document and introduces the structure she has prepared. A new management agency will be formed, named Yubi, combining their identities. She explains the distribution clearly. Jinwoo will hold the majority, with her retaining a smaller share and a portion allocated to Examiner Park Chang-sik, who will continue supporting them from within headquarters. She also outlines the team. Key personnel from headquarters have already resigned and will join them, having been offered better terms. Jinwoo listens as the plan unfolds. Everything has already been set in motion. Jinwoo studies the contract, hesitating for a moment before asking if she is certain about giving him the majority share. Jaya sits calmly and explains that this is her investment. Even with a smaller share, she is confident she can maximize its value. For her, control is less important than the relationship they are building. What matters now is trust and alignment, not short-term gain. After a brief pause, Jinwoo accepts her reasoning. He signs the contract and seals it. They exchange a firm handshake, confirming the partnership. The moment is interrupted. Hyuneo suddenly reacts, sensing something unusual nearby. A flash of light bursts from the forest, followed by a loud explosion. Jinwoo and Jaya turn immediately. From the bushes, Hyuneo emerges, dragging Ajin and her summon upside down. They have been hiding and observing. Jinwoo is caught off guard. Ajin, now on the ground, tries to recover, but the situation quickly turns into an interrogation. Jinwoo pieces together what happened. She recognized Jaya, followed her out of curiosity, and ended up witnessing everything. Ajin does not deny it. Instead, she turns the situation around, demanding an explanation from him. She presses him directly, unable to understand how he is connected to someone like Jaya. Jinwoo tries to stay composed, but internally he knows this was inevitable. His circumstances were bound to overlap with his family eventually. Jaya, on the other hand, remains calm. She even suggests that meeting his family was something she intended to do eventually. Jinwoo immediately pushes back on that idea, trying to delay things. Ajin continues pressing him, refusing to let it go. After some back and forth, she begins forming her own explanation. From her perspective, everything connects: his past as a gamer, his recent achievements, and his involvement with headquarters leading to this meeting. Jinwoo agrees with her version, choosing not to reveal the full truth. When she tries to connect it to his gaming history more specifically, he quickly redirects, avoiding anything that might expose his identity further. Ajin accepts the explanation for now, though her curiosity remains. Jinwoo, meanwhile, stays cautious, aware that revealing too much at this stage would only complicate things further. Ajin leans closer with a teasing smile, pointing out that even a long-time obsession with a game has finally paid off. Jinwoo listens quietly. Outwardly, he brushes it off, but his thoughts remain serious. He recalls the time his family spent caring for him during the years he was unconscious. That memory anchors his decision. No matter what happens, he cannot involve them recklessly. Before revealing everything, he needs to become strong enough to protect them. Ajin notices his hesitation and questions why he is only telling her this now. He answers honestly that he always intended to explain, including to their parents, but asks her to keep it confidential for the time being. She reacts with confusion, but he shifts the conversation. He points out her summon. The shadow elf is acting unusually cautious, almost fearful. Observing this, he explains that her current setup is inefficient. If she continues using that summon, she needs to pair it with a shadow wolf to maximize its potential. He describes the synergy clearly. Without it, her effectiveness will remain extremely limited. Ajin searches for it on her phone and quickly realizes the problem. The summon he is referring to is a B rank, far beyond what she can afford. The listed price is overwhelming. She shows him the screen, questioning how she is supposed to obtain something like that. Jinwoo tells her to wait. He assures her that he will get it for her within a month. She reacts with disbelief, dismissing it as him trying too hard to sound confident. Still, she decides to rely on her own efforts instead. Jinwoo stands up and prepares to leave, telling her not to be surprised later. Ajin watches him go, unsettled. The difference in his behavior is becoming more noticeable. To her, it feels as though he has changed into someone else entirely. A week later, the scene shifts. Jinwoo stands near a vehicle while staff prepare equipment. Bongjin presents a jacket with clear enthusiasm. Yujaya explains that this will be his standard gear for daily dungeon runs. She outlines the next step of their strategy. The agency's first product will not be physical, it will be information. They plan to record and sell dungeon clear strategies as premium content. Access will be restricted, and the value will come from efficiency and proven results. The equipment being prepared is part of that plan, designed to support consistent, high-level performance. Jinwoo listens, understanding the direction immediately. This is no longer just about clearing dungeons. It is about turning his knowledge into a system and scaling it. A small device on Jinwoo's jacket activates as he prepares to enter the dungeon. The attached system begins recording, capturing his surroundings in full detail. Jaya explains that everything he sees will be stored in 3D, allowing precise playback for analysis and resale. The gear is lightweight and flexible, designed for long sessions without restricting movement. He adjusts to the setup, slightly tense. The presence of recording staff and equipment makes the situation feel different from his usual runs. Still, he steadies himself. In front of the glowing red portal, he admits that it is his first time entering this particular dungeon, and that the run may not be perfect. Jaya reassures him that only the best footage will be used, so there is no pressure to perform flawlessly. After a brief pause, he thanks her. Then, almost casually, he asks if it would be fine if he broke the national record on his first attempt. Jaya is caught off guard by the sudden shift in confidence. Just moments earlier, he sounded uncertain. Now, he speaks as if the outcome is already decided. She tells him to proceed however he feels comfortable. Jinwoo steps forward and enters the portal. Inside, the environment shifts immediately. The Monday dungeon unfolds as a dark battlefield scattered with remnants of past battles. At its center lies a red rune, this dungeon's defining reward. Attack-type runes can only be obtained here, making it one of the most important dungeons for progression. Because of that, clear time directly affects ranking. The structure of the dungeon is clear. This is a defense-type scenario. For 30 minutes, players must hold off an incoming wave of undead enemies. At the same time, the optimal strategy is not to endure the full duration, but to locate and eliminate the boss, a lich controlling the legion. Doing so ends the dungeon immediately and drastically improves completion time. Jinwoo activates his recording device, confirming that everything is functioning properly. A system interface appears, allowing him to select from pre-configured teams. He has already prepared different formations, one for general use, one for combat situations, and one optimized for daily dungeons. He selects the appropriate setup. Summons materialize around him, forming a structured lineup. The battlefield begins to shift as the first wave of undead approaches. A timer appears, 30 minutes. Jinwoo stands at the front, calm and focused, facing the incoming legion. A cloaked commander signals the advance, and the undead surge forward in waves. Red-black energy trails behind them as skeletal soldiers flood the battlefield. Min Kong charges first, roaring as it tears through the front line. Skeletons are crushed and thrown aside with brute force. Hunio follows, cutting down enemies with precise, efficient strikes, keeping the pressure off Jinwoo's advance. Jinwoo moves forward calmly, his summons forming a tight formation behind him. The Golden Fairy hovers above, maintaining support as they push deeper into the field. Ahead, the Lich floats above the army, controlling the entire battlefield. Jinwoo studies the terrain and immediately decides on positioning. He directs the team toward higher ground, knowing it will give them both visibility and control. Without wasting time, they begin moving as a unit. The distance closes quickly. Based on his estimate, they will reach the boss in about 2 minutes. Behind them, the pursuing undead are handled cleanly. Hunio and Min Kong maintain control of the rear, preventing any disruption to Jinwoo's plan. Reaching a suitable position, Jinwoo prepares for the final phase. He signals his ranged unit. The combat sheriff steps forward, rifle ready. Its role is clear, long-range precision. While its damage output is limited, the Lich itself is fragile once its defenses are removed. Jinwoo raises his hand, stopping the shot. Timing matters. The Lich begins activating its defensive skill, forming a barrier around itself. Jinwoo responds immediately, calling for support. Radiance channels energy, and the Golden Fairy reinforces it. Together, they strip away the Lich's protection, removing its immunity. The opening appears. Jinwoo gives the command. The combat sheriff locks onto the target and fires. At the same time, Hunio and Min Kong continue suppressing the surrounding enemies, holding the line as the shot lands. The battlefield stabilizes. Jinwoo watches the result closely, his expression steady, already calculating the next move. The combat sheriff continues firing, its shots landing cleanly. The Lich's health begins to drop, though the damage still looks modest compared to the rest of the team's output. Even so, the steady pressure is working. The Lich reacts, its red eyes flickering as bullets strike its body. Dark energy gathers again as it attempts to maintain control over the battlefield. Around it, the undead continue advancing, forcing Min Kong to hold the front line. Golden light surrounds Min Kong as its health recovers under support. It withstands the pressure, but the situation highlights a common issue. Without proper setup, this approach would be inefficient for most players. A skeleton suddenly drops from above, catching Min Kong off guard and clawing into it. The impact forces a reaction, but before the situation escalates, Hunio intervenes. With a precise strike, he cuts the attacker down instantly. Jinwoo remains composed, watching everything unfold. For an average player, this setup would struggle, but he is not operating at that level. With Hunio's presence, the team's performance changes completely. The synergy between skills, positioning, and timing begins to show. The combat sheriff continues firing, while the rest of the team maintains control of the battlefield. Jinwoo gives the final signal. A charge shot is released. The bullet cuts straight through the air and pierces the Lich's head. The effect is immediate. The Lich recoils, its control breaking, and its body collapses. The surrounding undead lose coordination as the dungeon ends. A system notification appears. The dungeon is cleared. The recorded time, just over 4 minutes. A new national record is set. At the same time, Ujaya stands in front of a ranking display with her team. She had expected progress, but not at this speed. It has only been a week since Jinwoo received his summons, yet he has already begun challenging the highest records. Her staff express concern. While his previous results were impressive, they still do not fully understand how he plans to clear every daily dungeon. Jaya listens, then responds calmly. Regardless of the uncertainty, she is already committed. The business was built on her decision, and she is prepared to take responsibility for the outcome. She reassures her team that their positions are secure, removing their immediate concerns. Behind her confidence, however, one thing is clear. Jinwoo is exceeding expectations faster than anyone anticipated. Back in the field, Jinwoo stands quietly as the energy from the cleared dungeon settles. Ramba hovers nearby, calling out to him, while the surroundings return to stillness. Somewhere nearby, a hidden chest rests beneath a tree, another reward waiting to be claimed. Jinwoo looks ahead. This is only the beginning. Jinwoo steps out of the dungeon with the same calm expression he had when entering. Moments later, confirmation spreads. He has broken the national record on his very first attempt. Across monitoring stations, reactions erupt. The previous record has been surpassed by a wide margin. Screens update, displaying his name as the new benchmark. The result is clear and undeniable. Yujaya watches the update come in. At first, there is a brief pause, then the realization settles. What she invested in is already proving itself. She acknowledges it quietly. This venture will succeed. If momentum continues, the outcome could go far beyond expectations. Back on the field, Jinwoo finishes the run and disables the recording system on his jacket. The immediate objective is complete. He shifts his focus without delay. A system interface appears, and he begins organizing his next steps. Instead of stopping, he transitions directly into optimization. Auto Battle is activated for the Monday dungeon, allowing continuous farming without manual input. He restructures his team. Hunio is withdrawn from active duty and reassigned to training. The rest of the summons will improve under his supervision. Jinwoo prioritizes long-term efficiency over short-term repetition. He summons Ramba and assigns her to manage the dungeon grind. At first, she hesitates, questioning why Hunio is not taking the role. But when training is mentioned, her reaction changes immediately. Remembering the intensity of that routine, she quickly volunteers to handle the grind instead. Jinwoo accepts and finalizes the setup. With auto battle running and training delegated, the system begins operating on its own, rewards, materials, and experience accumulating steadily. The structure is complete. An efficient cycle is now in place. Farming, training, and progression running simultaneously. Satisfied, Jinwoo moves on. He exits through the portal and returns to the surface. Tizsop greets him formally, while Jaya approaches with a composed smile. He hands over the recording equipment, confirming that all data has been captured. She assures him that the footage will be secured and handled properly. When asked if there is anything else he needs, Jinwoo answers directly. He does not care about publicity or recognition. What matters to him is protection. He makes it clear his family's safety comes first. Jaya understands immediately. Given the current environment, where criminal groups still operate freely, this request is not excessive. With Yubi managing him, security will be strengthened accordingly. Jinwoo walks away through the city, already looking ahead. The system is running. The foundation is set. Now, he continues forward. Yujaya listens carefully, then closes her eyes for a moment before answering. She accepts his request without hesitation, stating that she will protect his family even if it requires using her full backing. Jinwoo continues without pause. Inside another dungeon, he tests a new setup. A Komodo-type summon clears enemies efficiently while the run is being recorded. The result appears quickly, just over 3 minutes. He notes that with proper optimization, even faster times are possible. By combining movement speed runes with a wind-based support summon, the clear speed improves significantly. After confirming the recording, he ends the session and moves on. The next stage begins. A frozen landscape stretches across the Wednesday dungeon. This area specializes in defense-type runes, but the environment itself is the primary obstacle. The extreme cold slows movement and drains stamina. Jinwoo immediately adjusts his strategy. He summons units suited for the environment, a frost-resistant beast, a wind-type support, and a heavy defensive unit. At the center of this setup is a titanium golem, chosen for its durability and mobility across rough terrain. The team mounts the golem and advances. Despite the unstable movement, the approach is effective. The golem absorbs incoming attacks while maintaining forward momentum. Instead of navigating the terrain normally, Jinwoo uses vertical routes, climbing and crossing terrain that would otherwise slow progress. This reduces travel time significantly. As they reach the boss zone, the encounter begins immediately. The enemy, a large ice-type beast, attacks with freezing energy. Jinwoo coordinates the response without delay. He deploys a support summon to disrupt the boss's stance, then signals Peikriang. She channels her attack. A concentrated burst of flame surges forward, overwhelming the boss's defenses. The clash ends quickly. The system confirms the result. Another dungeon cleared. Another record. Once the tension drops, the physical strain catches up to him. Jinwoo steps off the golem, his expression tightening. The rapid movement, extreme cold, and continuous runs begin to take a toll. He bends forward and vomits, his body reacting to the accumulated stress. Around him, his summons pause. Despite the result, the cost is becoming noticeable. News of Jinwoo's run spreads rapidly. Articles begin circulating across platforms, highlighting the newly set records. First the Tuesday dungeon, then Wednesday, each cleared faster than expected. His name appears repeatedly, drawing attention from both players and organizations. People begin connecting the events. Some recognize him from earlier discussions, while others question how someone without an established reputation is achieving these results. The pattern is clear. He is not just improving, he is dominating. Headlines shift from curiosity to focus. The question is no longer who he is, but how far he'll go next. Inside an office, the director reviews the reports. He recalls the earlier proposal involving Jinwoo, an offer that was dismissed due to internal disagreement. At the time, it seemed uncertain. Now, with clear results in front of him, the decision appears short-sighted. He acknowledges it plainly. The information Jinwoo offered was real. In hindsight, rejecting him meant losing both influence and opportunity. In a system driven by outcomes, results outweigh prior judgment. From his perspective, a valuable asset was overlooked. He immediately instructs his secretary to re-establish contact. This time, there is no hesitation. They need to secure a connection with Jinwoo by any means available. Meanwhile, Jinwoo continues his routine. Each dungeon serves a specific purpose. Monday and Wednesday provide rune-related growth. Tuesday offers materials for enhancement. Thursday yields skill books, useful, but limited in scope since they do not grant unique or latent abilities. Sunday exists as an optional cycle, but its rewards overlap with Thursday, making it inefficient. He evaluates all of this logically. There is no reason to waste effort on redundant gains. Instead, he restructures his schedule. Thursday is sufficient for skill acquisition, so Sunday is removed from his grind entirely. For the first time in days, he allows himself to rest. Jinwoo lies down, his body finally recovering from continuous runs. Nearby, Ramba rests as well. The system he built continues operating, training, farming, and accumulation all progressing in the background. For now, he pauses, but the momentum he created is still moving forward. The ground ruptures without warning, and multiple alerts flash at once. The boss appears immediately. No build-up, no preparation phase. A massive earth golem rises, its body layered with dense rock and a glowing core. Its defense is overwhelming, far beyond ordinary enemies. This dungeon is designed to force a direct, high-risk confrontation from the start. The standard approach is well known. Use a B-rank White Wolf to reduce the boss's defense, then follow up with coordinated damage. Jinwoo ignores it. He opens his system panel and selects his own setup. For him, reducing defense is unnecessary. With enough output and proper execution, the boss can be broken directly. Still, he recognizes a limitation, not in combat, but in presentation. The method he is using cannot be turned into a practical guide. It relies too heavily on an elite team that most players cannot replicate. So instead, he frames the logic internally. If this were to be taught, the proper method would still involve weakening the boss first and then targeting its weak point. The head. That is the key. The battle begins. The titanium golem steps forward, acting as both shield and platform. Jinwoo and his summons position themselves strategically on it, closing distance efficiently. The earth golem attacks first. A massive fist crashes down, shaking the ground. Debris scatters, but the titanium golem holds firm. Jinwoo gives the command. Focus on the head. Hunio moves instantly, cutting through the golem's structure with precise strikes. At the same time, the team maintains pressure, creating openings. Then Paekryang steps in. She raises her staff, gathering concentrated fire. The energy condenses, then releases in a controlled burst. A dragon-shaped wave of flames surges forward and strikes the target directly. The impact is decisive. The earth golem collapses, its body breaking apart under the combined force. The system confirms the result. Dungeon cleared. Time, just over 5 minutes. Another national record surpassed. Jinwoo watches the result calmly. He notes the difference. Compared to previous runs, the margin is smaller, but still significant. More importantly, the method is consistent. His attention shifts to his summons. Hunio continues moving across the battlefield, still active even after the fight. Jinwoo observes him briefly, acknowledging his strength, but he makes a decision. Hunio will not be part of the Thursday dungeon team. Instead, he looks toward Paikryang. With proper development, her output alone can determine the outcome of high-level encounters. He reaches out and acknowledges her performance. Then, without pause, he resets his stance. The run is not over. He prepares to enter again. Jinwoo steps out of the portal, hands in his pockets, as two suited men approach and confirm his identity. They introduce themselves as representatives from the director's office and present their card. He listens, but his reaction is immediate. They explain that his earlier proposal is now being reconsidered after seeing his results. Jinwoo cuts them off with a small gesture and tells them to forget it. The tone is calm, but the refusal is clear. When they hesitate, he clarifies he is already affiliated with an agency. Any further discussion should go through Ujaya and Yubi. With that, he leaves. Behind him, the two men realize what they have missed. The name, Yubi, and Jaya's involvement make it clear this opportunity has already been taken. Later, Jinwoo stands alone on a rooftop, looking out over the city. He confirms the area is isolated enough and begins preparing for the next phase. The Friday dungeon is different. Unlike the others, it is not about summons fighting. The player must move through it directly. Speed, control, and positioning become the deciding factors. He opens his system panel. To prepare, he summons a B-rank sky wyvern. The creature forms above him, and a protective shield activates automatically. Even so, standing at that height brings a moment of hesitation. He reaches forward, steadies himself, and climbs onto the wyvern. Then he launches. The wyvern surges into the air, cutting across the skyline. Wind rushes past as the city shrinks below. At first, he braces himself, but quickly adjusts. The motion becomes natural. What starts as caution turns into focus. He begins treating it like practice, learning balance, timing, and control while in motion. They arrive near the coast, where he dismounts. Hunio observes in silence, while Hayo reacts with exaggerated praise, impressed by how quickly Jinwoo adapted. Jinwoo brushes it off, but the improvement is evident. He looks ahead. This next dungeon will depend entirely on him, and he is already preparing for it. Jinwoo listens as Paikryang explains that even experienced summons struggled at first with aerial movement. She recalls how difficult it was to control mounts like wyverns and dolphins during their time in Battle of Summoners. Hunio, visibly less enthusiastic, reacts with quiet frustration, but Jinwoo accepts their input with a light smile. He decides on the next step. Practice. Standing by the coast, he tells them he will train using a sky dolphin as well. Learning directly from summons who already have experience will be the fastest way to adapt. Paikryang and Hunio agree to guide him, and training begins. Several days pass. The scene shifts to a structured trial field, the Friday dungeon entry point. This dungeon is entirely different from the others. It is not about combat. It is about movement, timing, and execution. Jinwoo steps into position. A countdown appears. He summons a wind falcon and receives a movement speed buff. As the timer hits 0, he launches forward. The course activates immediately. Projectiles fire, traps trigger, and tiles react to each step. Jinwoo moves at high speed, weaving through attacks with precision. Unlike before, he is now fully engaged. This is not controlled through screen. Every movement is real. He recognizes it instantly. This is faster, sharper, and more intuitive than any simulation. Mid-run, he shifts strategy. Instead of following the standard route across the surface, he triggers a hidden path. A precise step launches him upward, creating an opening. He summons a sky dolphin. Using it, he dives underwater, bypassing the traps above entirely. The path becomes clear, no interference, no obstacles. Then, at the right moment, he transitions again. He summons a sky wyvern mid-movement and shifts from water to air in one continuous sequence. The transition is clean, with no loss of momentum. From there, the path is direct. He flies over the remaining obstacles and heads straight for the finish. He crosses the goal. The system confirms the result. Clear time, just over 2 minutes. A new national record. Another achievement unlocked. Jinwoo exhales, steady but satisfied. The method is complete. The execution is clean, and the result speaks for itself. The pace does not slow. After clearing the Friday dungeon, Jinwoo moves straight into the remaining daily dungeons. The Saturday dungeon burns under a blazing sky as his summons sweep through the field, eliminating enemies in a controlled, overwhelming assault. The clear time is short. He continues. The Sunday dungeon follows. Despite its difficulty, the team executes cleanly. Coordination, timing, and accumulated strength all show. The boss, an advanced entity, is defeated without disruption, and the dungeon ends in a decisive finish. The system displays the result. All low-tier, daily dungeons cleared. Total time, under 15 minutes. A new national benchmark. Jinwoo exhales, wiping sweat from his forehead. The results are consistent now. With continued repetition, the times will drop further. But speed is no longer the main objective. Growth is. He looks toward the towering structure in the distance, the Tower of Trials. That is the real goal. To reach it properly, he needs stronger summons, better runes, and refined skills. He estimates the timeline. 2 years. Whether that is enough remains uncertain, but the direction is clear. He reviews his inventory. Rewards from repeated clears have accumulated materials, scrolls, and various items. The quantity is no longer the issue. The question is how to use them efficiently. At Yubi's office, Ujaya reviews the situation. News of Jinwoo's achievements has already spread. Reports continue to highlight his rapid progression, and public attention is intensifying. She remains composed. From her perspective, this reaction is expected. The edited footage is ready. Her team presents it, but their reactions are mixed. Even while editing, they found it difficult to believe what they were seeing. The strategies, the execution, and the transitions between summons are far beyond normal standards. When she watches the footage, the conclusion is immediate. This is not something most players can replicate. Selling it directly as a guide could even backfire. Viewers might reject it as unrealistic. But that does not reduce its value. It increases it. Jaya shifts her approach. Instead of focusing only on selling information, she targets the ecosystem around it. She gives a direct order. Acquire every summon that appears in Jinwoo's runs. Her team reacts, understanding the implication. Market control. If those summons become desirable after the video release, owning the supply in advance ensures maximum leverage. They begin preparing to move within their budget. She stops them. Budget is not a constraint. Buy everything. The strategy changes from simple monetization to full-scale positioning. While Jinwoo continues refining his strength, Yubi begins shaping the market around him. Ujaya doesn't hesitate. If funding falls short, she decides she'll borrow whatever is needed on her own name. Within hours, she secures the loans and completes the bulk purchases. Then she moves to the next phase. She lists the dungeon strategy information for sale, but at a surprisingly low price. Her team questions it immediately, but she explains the logic clearly. The information itself is not the product. It is bait. The real profit lies in the summons. She instructs them to list the hoarded summons at extreme markups, far above current market value. The reasoning is simple. Once players consume the strategy content, demand for those specific summons will spike. With supply already controlled, buyers will have no alternative. The plan works instantly. Sales begin flooding in, far exceeding expectations. What started as a modest investment multiplies rapidly, turning into massive revenue before the full rollout even begins. Jaya steadies herself, suppressing the excitement. The proof is complete. This model works. She immediately shifts into expansion mode, larger investments, infrastructure, and scaling operations. The next step is clear. Grow fast enough to match Jinwoo's trajectory. Elsewhere, Jinwoo sits quietly on a park bench, reviewing his own progress. His earnings from dungeon rewards and scroll sales have accumulated quickly. Even in a short time, the returns are significant. Rambo reacts with amazement, trying to process the numbers in her own way. Jinwoo, however, remains grounded. He remembers clearly, no matter how many scrolls he opened, EX-rank summons never appeared easily. That has not changed. So instead of relying on luck, he focuses on certainty. Growth. Strengthening the summons he already has will yield more reliable results than chasing rare pulls. He shifts his attention to inventory. Items from repeated dungeon runs are piling up, materials, drops, and equipment with real value. Selling them efficiently becomes the next step. He considers his options, then decides. Beck Ajin is already experienced in rune trading. She understands the market, and she has been supporting the family during difficult times. It makes sense to involve her. He sends her a message, asking to meet. At the same time, he recalls how she helped cover expenses during his recovery. This is not just about convenience. It is an opportunity to return that support. Jinwoo lowers his phone with a small smile. Now is the right time to start giving back. Inside a cafe, several girls chatted excitedly while eating together. One blonde girl laughed as she talked about her new boyfriend becoming a player. The conversation quickly shifted towards summons, ranks, and expensive runes as the others excitedly asked whether he already had a B-rank summon yet. The girl admitted he did not have one yet, but apparently he planned to get one soon. Hearing that, another friend jokingly said he might eventually start giving out summons or runes as gifts. The group immediately reacted with jealousy. Meanwhile, Ajin quietly lowered her gaze and let out a small sigh. One of her friends quickly noticed something was wrong and asked whether she was feeling okay. Ajin forced a smile and casually brushed it off, claiming she had simply been spacing out. Still, her friends continued encouraging her to share whatever was bothering her. After hesitating for a moment, Ajin awkwardly admitted that the player everyone had been talking about recently was actually her brother. The moment the words entered her mind, memories of Jinwoo telling her to keep everything secret resurfaced immediately. The UB company, the dungeon records, the information business, the expensive summons. Even now, she still could not believe her brother had built an entire company around dungeon strategy information. As her friends continued casually asking questions about her brother, Ajin started sweating nervously. Honestly, she barely knew how to answer anymore. Keeping the secret from even their parents already felt difficult enough. Trying not to reveal anything to her friends only made it worse. At one point, she nearly imagined herself screaming the entire truth out loud from frustration. Then suddenly, her phone vibrated. Ajin looked down and saw a message from Jinwoo asking her to come to the vacant lot. Her eyes widened slightly. Honestly, every time her brother called recently, something unbelievable ended up happening. After staring at the message for a moment, Ajin quickly stood from her seat and apologized to her friends, explaining that she had to leave early because her brother contacted her. The others looked disappointed since they originally planned to eat dinner together afterward. One friend even asked whether her brother, who had recently woken from his coma, was doing okay now. Ajin awkwardly assured them everything was fine and promised she would explain things later before quickly leaving the cafe. Soon afterward, she arrived at the empty training area near the rocky cliffside. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. Summons were running wild across the field. A forest cat fired blasts toward red monsters while explosions erupted nearby. A wyvern flew overhead as several summons rushed across the area at high speed. Fairies darted around a massive golem while it tried to catch them. And standing nearby with a whistle in his mouth was Hunio. Ajin immediately recognized him as the summon who completely overwhelmed her shadow elf before. Hunio briefly glanced toward her before calmly looking away again. Meanwhile, Ajin stood there completely blank-faced while trying to process the situation. Then she suddenly spotted Jinwoo nearby. He stood shirtless with a towel around his shoulders while casually wiping away sweat after training. The moment Ajin saw him properly, she became even more confused. His body looked completely different from before. Not long ago, he had been so weak he could barely move after spending years inside a hospital bed surviving on 4 drips. Now, he looked like someone who trained every single day without rest. Staring at him in disbelief, Ajin quietly wondered whether her brother's body had always looked like that, and she simply never noticed. Jinwoo casually draped a towel around his neck while looking toward Ajin and asking whether she was okay. But Ajin barely reacted. Instead, she pointed toward the summons training behind him with a completely stunned expression. The moment she recognized them properly, her shock only grew stronger. Those summons were currently some of the hottest topics in the market. Combat Sheriff and Priest of Radiance alone were already being traded for nearly 200 million won each. And the B-rank summons like Sky Wyvern, Wind Falcon, and Titanium Golem had become almost impossible to obtain due to the complete lack of supply, which made one thing impossible to understand. How did Jinwoo have all of them? As the thought crossed her mind, another rumor suddenly resurfaced. People online claimed those exact summons recently appeared inside strategy videos sold by Yubi. Ajin slowly looked back at her brother. Then her eyes widened sharply. There was only one explanation left. Staring at him in disbelief, she finally realized the truth. Jinwoo was the player who set all the daily dungeon records. And those summons were the same ones from the videos. When she demanded to know where he even got such expensive summons, Jinwoo casually mentioned Ujaya. The moment he brought her up, Ajin immediately remembered the elegant woman who previously visited their house. But when Jinwoo calmly explained that Jaya personally gave him those summons, Ajin nearly lost her mind. Those summons alone were worth absurd amounts of money. Yet according to him, they did not even belong to the company. They were simply his. Ajin stood there blankly for several seconds while trying to process everything. Meanwhile, Jinwoo casually changed the topic and pointed out how quickly she arrived after his message. Finally remembering why she came, Ajin asked what he wanted to discuss. Instead of answering directly, Jinwoo asked whether she was still selling runes regularly. Ajin nodded, explaining she sold some just the previous day. Then, without warning, Jinwoo opened his inventory. A huge pile of dungeon rewards instantly poured onto the ground between them. Runes, skill books, materials, dungeon drops. The sheer amount made Ajin recoil in shock. Jinwoo casually explained that they were simply rewards he collected from dungeon clears before asking her to take a look. The moment Ajin picked up the first rune, her expression immediately became serious. She quickly identified a swiftness rune before commenting that its stats were slightly awkward. Then she found another rune with an unusually rare critical hit probability option and immediately realized it would sell for a high price. Even while continuing to examine item after item, she rapidly judged their values almost instinctively. Some had excellent options. Others had mismatched stat combinations. But regardless of the item, Ajin could immediately determine its approximate market value. Watching her work, Jinwoo quietly realized once again how talented she was in this field. She practically lived inside the marketplace. Not only had she memorized low drop rate rune effects, but she could also quickly evaluate skill books and materials as well. She even recognized all of his summons immediately after seeing them. Honestly, her sense for trading was exceptional. After silently observing her for a while, Jinwoo finally called her name. Ajin looked up in surprise while still holding one of the books against her chest. Then Jinwoo calmly made his proposal. He would give her all of these items, and in return, he wanted her to handle selling them for him. Ajin froze slightly. At first, she looked genuinely surprised by the offer. But after thinking quietly for a moment, she slowly realized something. She was actually confident she could do it well. More than that, she wanted to prove herself properly too. Over time, she had already developed solid business instincts from constantly working inside the marketplace. And deep down, she did not want to fall behind everyone else anymore. As Ajin examined the pile of dungeon rewards, an old memory surfaced in her mind. Even when they were children, no matter what game they played together, she always enjoyed trading far more than hunting monsters. While other players chased rare drops, she spent her time comparing prices, exchanging items, and figuring out how to profit. Looking down at the mountain of runes and materials spread across the ground, she quickly realized something important. If she started selling items on this scale, there would be no reason for her to continue ordinary rune farming anymore. With a serious expression, she looked back at Jinwoo and suggested that instead of casually selling a few items, they should properly focus on the business side from now on. Still, there was one issue she could not ignore. This was no longer a favor between siblings. If it became ongoing work, she needed to think about her own future too. After hesitating slightly, Ajin carefully asked what her commission would be. Jinwoo simply crossed his arms and calmly asked her how much she wanted. After thinking for a moment, Ajin explained that large wholesalers usually took around 8 to 10%, but since it was him, she would settle for 5% instead. Jinwoo stared at her quietly for a second before letting out a small laugh. Then he told her not to say something ridiculous like 5% between family. Before Ajin could react, he raised 2 fingers with a smile and offered her 20% instead. Ajin completely froze. 20% was far beyond what she expected. And considering the value of the items Jinwoo continuously obtained from dungeons, the amount of money involved would become enormous. Jinwoo casually told her to work hard because he planned to keep giving her far more valuable items in the future anyway. Only then did Ajin realize this was not a one-time arrangement. It was a real business, a long-term one. As Jinwoo walked away with a relaxed smile, Ajin remained standing there in complete shock. Selling all those items with a 20% cut, that alone could completely change her life. She slowly clenched her hands together while watching his back disappear into the distance. At that moment, she realized she no longer needed to waste time farming herself anymore. Tears welled slightly in her eyes as a bright smile spread across her face. For the first time, she could clearly picture her future. She was going to become a professional merchant. After entrusting the dungeon rewards to Ajin, Jinwoo shifted his full focus back toward training Paekryang. Inside another dungeon, blazing fire spiraled across the battlefield, while Paekryang unleashed explosive dragon wave once again. A massive dragon-shaped torrent of flames devoured everything in its path, while Jinwoo calmly watched from inside a protective barrier. To him, one thing had become obvious. A strong damage dealer was essential for any powerful player, and Paekryang was growing stronger at an incredible speed. After the battle ended, Jinwoo praised her warmly and patted her head, telling her she was already strong enough to clear D-rank dungeons effortlessly. Paekryang shyly thanked him while trying to hide her happiness. As they continued deeper into the cave afterward, Jinwoo realized it had been quite a while since he started running dungeons with only Paekryang by his side. Meanwhile, the other summons were still being trained separately under Hunio. Even without their player present, summons could remain active independently for several hours and even reverse summon themselves when necessary. As they walked quietly through the dim cave, Jinwoo suddenly asked Paekryang whether there was anything else she wanted. Before she could answer, a goblin hiding behind a rock suddenly lunged toward them with its weapon raised. Paekryang's eyes widened instantly as she reacted to the ambush. Paekryang reacted instantly. She turned and swung her staff, sending a streak of fire across the cave that burned straight through the attacking goblin. After the brief interruption, the two continued walking side by side through the dungeon. Jinwoo brought the conversation back to what they had been discussing earlier and asked again if there was anything she wanted, mentioning how Hunio enjoyed training while Ramba was obsessed with cream bread. Paekryang held her staff close and hesitated for a moment. But when Jinwoo encouraged her to speak honestly, she simply smiled softly and admitted that she was already satisfied just being useful to him the way she was now. Her answer caught him off guard. Touched by how sincere she sounded, Jinwoo repeatedly patted her head before insisting she at least ask for something small, even if it was just food she wanted to eat. Normally summons did not need meals, but Jinwoo had already spent enough time around human-type summons to know they still enjoyed eating. Ramba loved cream bread, and he had often shared meals with the others too. Since they clearly had a sense of taste, he felt bad enjoying good food by himself while leaving them out. Trying to guess Paekryang's preference, he assumed someone as shy as her probably liked desserts or sweet things. But after thinking quietly for a moment, Paekryang unexpectedly mentioned fried chicken and beer instead. Jinwoo paused in surprise before laughing lightly. Then he asked what skill she planned to learn next. Paekryang explained that the next stage of the explosive dragon secret arts was Link. Hearing that, Jinwoo immediately suggested making a deal. The day she mastered the skill, everyone would take a full break from training and hold a proper chicken party together. Paekryang's eyes lit up instantly. She happily agreed and declared that she would work hard so she could rest afterward. Watching her reaction, Jinwoo quickly realized she seemed even more excited about the break itself than the fried chicken. Still, he decided it did not matter. As long as it motivated her to keep improving, that was enough. Elsewhere, Jaya stood with Bongjin and the others at a large construction site. Heavy equipment moved across the open land while unfinished structures stretched into the distance. When Bongjin asked where she even found such a place, Jaya explained that she had purchased the property from her grandfather. She then pointed across the massive area while outlining her plans. The main building would become Yubi's headquarters. Separate sections would contain employee dormitories and apartments. And beneath every structure, she planned to build underground bunkers as well. The others stared at her in confusion when she mentioned bunkers, But Jaya calmly remembered Jinwoo's request to protect his family no matter what happened. She intended to keep that promise properly. As the wind blew through the open field, Jaya also decided the empty land nearby would make a perfect training ground since Jinwoo preferred spacious areas for his summons. A moment later, she asked Bongjin whether he had obtained the summon she requested earlier. He nodded before summoning a shadow wolf in a burst of blue light. The powerful wolf stepped forward quietly while Bongjin questioned why she specifically wanted that summon. Jaya simply folded her arms and smiled. She already knew exactly who she planned to give it to. The scene shifts to a busy restaurant filled with the sound of sizzling meat and lively conversation. Ajin sat at a table with her friends while steam rose from the grill in front of them. The girls excitedly praised the expensive food and asked whether it was really okay for her to treat them at a place like this. Ajin simply smiled and told them to order whatever they wanted. Recently, her situation had completely changed. Thanks to the huge number of dungeon items Jinwoo continuously handed over to her, her business had grown rapidly. Not only was the volume impressive, but many of the items also had exceptionally good options. Because of that, more and more customers kept approaching her first whenever they needed high-quality runes, skill books, or equipment. Some even begged her to contact them immediately whenever rare drops appeared. As the conversation continued at the table, one of the girls suddenly brought up Beak Jinwoo. Everyone immediately recognized the name. After all, he had recently become one of the hottest topics online thanks to repeatedly breaking dungeon records. Ajin quietly listened while pretending to focus on her food. Her friends excitedly wondered whether he might even challenge world records next. Then the conversation shifted in a completely different direction. The girls started talking about how handsome he supposedly was and joked that someone like him definitely had a girlfriend already. Ajin nearly choked listening to them. To her, Jinwoo was still the same older brother she had known her whole life. So hearing strangers praise him like some celebrity felt completely ridiculous. But things became even worse a moment later. One of the girls suddenly mentioned that since Beak Jinwoo belonged to Yu Jaya's company, there was probably some connection through social media. Curious, they immediately searched through Yu Jaya's following list. Ajin casually told them to go ahead, assuming nothing would come of it. Then the atmosphere instantly changed. The girls suddenly froze while staring at the phone screen before slowly turning toward Ajin in shock. Yu Jaya was following her account. Ajin hurriedly grabbed her own phone in disbelief. Sure enough, the follow was real. Sweat immediately formed on her face as she realized what probably happened. Jaya likely followed her simply because she was Jinwoo's sister. Unfortunately, her friends are already far too excited to think calmly anymore. They aggressively leaned across the table and demanded an explanation, asking how she knew Yu Jaya and whether they were personally close. Ajin completely stiffened under the pressure and struggled to come up with an excuse. Before she could respond properly, her phone suddenly vibrated. Still panicking, she checked the message and immediately froze. The sender was Yu Jaya herself. The message politely asked whether Ajin happened to have time tomorrow. The moment she read it, Ajin abruptly shot up from her seat and shouted in shock loud enough for nearby diners to turn around. Even the restaurant staff looked over in confusion while her friends stared at her with burning curiosity. A quiet city street stretched beneath the afternoon sky as a black sedan slowly pulled up beside Ajin. The window lowered, revealing Yu Jaya sitting calmly behind the wheel. With a small smile, she greeted Ajin and told her to get in. Ajin immediately hurried into the car, unable to hide her excitement. As the sedan drove through the city, Ajin nervously fidgeted in her seat before carefully bringing up the reason for today's meeting. Jaya explained that she wanted to visit Jinwoo's family personally. Since Jinwoo had become increasingly busy lately, she first asked him whether she could deliver gifts under Yubi's name, and he agreed. Ajin stared at her in surprise. From her perspective, simply sending the gifts would have been more than enough, yet Jaya had decided to visit in person herself. The thought strangely made Ajin feel a little jealous. Meanwhile, Jaya calmly asked whether arriving unexpectedly would cause any trouble for her parents. Ajin quickly assured her everything was fine. She had already told them to stay home because she wanted to introduce someone important. At the same time, she could not help remembering how often her parents constantly asked about Jinwoo lately, while she struggled to answer anything properly. Jinwoo had become so busy that even contacting his family regularly had become difficult. Ajin jokingly complained that her brother was probably the most clueless person in the world when it came to keeping his family updated. Eventually, the sedan stopped in front of their modest apartment building. After taking the elevator upstairs, Ajin opened the apartment door and called for her parents. Jaya quietly followed behind her while observing the small living room and kitchen area. Compared to the environments she normally lived in, the apartment felt incredibly small and simple. Still, there was something warm and genuine about it that she quietly appreciated. A moment later, Ajin's parents stepped out to greet them. But the moment they noticed Jaya standing there, they completely froze. Jaya politely introduced herself as the CEO of UB, and the atmosphere instantly turned chaotic. Ajin's parents could barely believe that the famous woman from Dawn Group was personally standing inside their home. After everyone finally sat down together, Ajin awkwardly explained the situation while her parents tried to process everything they had just learned. Not only had Jinwoo become a famous player, but the woman sitting across from them was also the CEO of his company and a member of one of the largest conglomerate families in the country. Jaya calmly confirmed everything while explaining that she had come today as Yubi's representative. Ajin's parents immediately panicked and apologized repeatedly for welcoming such an important guest into such a humble home. Watching them react that way, even Ajin quietly realized just how overwhelming Jaya's presence really was. Then Jaya carefully brought up the main reason for her visit. According to Jinwoo's contract with UB, the company was also responsible for supporting and protecting his family. Ajin's parents blankly repeated the word family in disbelief. Jaya then handed them a thick document outlining the support package UB prepared for them. The details included personal security, medical care, relocation support, living expenses, and various other forms of assistance. As they continued reading, their expressions slowly turned more stunned with every page. Then they finally reached the monthly living expense section, 10 million won per month. The couple completely lost their composure. Even Ajin sat there speechless after seeing the amount herself. Seeing their reactions, Jaya gently reassured them that the support was actually quite small compared to Jinwoo's achievements and future value. Then, with a calm smile, she revealed that she had also prepared a few gifts for the family personally. That announcement alone nearly overwhelmed Ajin's parents all over again. A holographic inventory window opened in front of Jaya as she explained that Jinwoo had mentioned how much Ajin's father liked summons. Embarrassed, he awkwardly admitted that it probably started because of the small pebble golem he owned. Jaya smiled and immediately selected something from her inventory. A burst of blue light filled the room as a new summon materialized before everyone. It was a diamond golem. Although it was roughly the same size as the pebble golem, Jaya explained that it was a far stronger B-rank summon. The crystal-covered golem cheerfully posed in front of the stunned father, whose eyes immediately lit up with excitement. Completely overwhelmed, he thanked Jaya emotionally and admitted he never imagined receiving something like this because of his son. Jaya then turned toward Ajin's mother and calmly revealed that she prepared a gift for her as well. Another flash of light appeared as she summoned a tiny rainbow snail. The adorable B-rank creature sparkled softly while crawling across Jaya's hand. According to her, fewer than 100 of them existed worldwide, and the slime it produced had excellent skincare effects that helped brighten skin and reduce wrinkles. Ajin's mother instantly fell in love with it. Blushing happily, she carefully held the tiny creature in her hands while staring at it in amazement. Watching her parents receive such rare summons so casually, Ajin could only stare in disbelief while joking that they were unbelievably lucky. Then Jaya casually mentioned that there was still one more gift remaining. Ajin barely had time to react before dark blue energy suddenly filled the room. A massive white shadow wolf slowly emerged from the light. The moment Ajin saw it, she completely froze. Her hands trembled while she stared at the summon in total disbelief. She immediately recognized it. The exact summon Jinwoo once told her would perfectly match her shadow elf. Jaya calmly explained that Jinwoo already knew Ajin would love it. Unable to contain herself anymore, Ajin practically threw herself onto the wolf while crying with happiness. Her parents watched the scene in complete shock while wondering whether it was truly acceptable to receive gifts this valuable. Meanwhile, Ajin excitedly declared that she would make sure Jinwoo treated them even better from now on. Jaya simply covered her mouth with a graceful smile and softly called her adorable. Eventually, Ajin's mother nervously insisted that they could not continue accepting so much without properly hosting Jaya in return. To everyone's surprise, Jaya happily agreed and revealed that she already had a restaurant prepared for them. Later, the entire family gathered together inside a traditional restaurant. As they ate, Ajin's parents casually reflected on how Jinwoo spent most of his life playing games instead of studying. Still, they admitted that whenever he became interested in something, he always devoted himself to it completely. Ajin laughed and argued that people were exaggerating too much over her brother's success, especially considering he only started seriously playing recently. But before she could continue, her father quietly corrected her. Jinwoo had not been playing for 1 year. He had been playing for nearly 10. The table instantly fell silent. Jaya slowly lowered her drink while staring at him in shock. Even Ajin looked completely stunned. Her father uncertainly explained that Jinwoo probably started around middle school. He still remembered secretly checking on him late at night after finding him asleep at his desk beside his phone. The game was always the same: Battle of Summoners. Year after year, Jinwoo continued playing it obsessively all the way through high school. As the memories resurfaced, both Ajin and Jaya slowly realized the same thing. Only one player could possibly have spent an entire decade devoted to that game. An uneasy silence settled over the table, and in both of their minds, the same name quietly surfaced: God Jinwoo. Jinwoo sat cross-legged in his room while a large inventory window floated in front of him. Inside it were the summons he had steadily raised through the daily dungeons, including the Titanium Golem, Frostcat, Horned Fairy, Wind Falcon, and several lava drakes. After quietly reviewing their levels and growth, he began wondering whether his current lineup was finally strong enough to challenge the intermediate-tier dungeons properly. Picking up his phone, he contacted Jaya first. He informed her that he planned to begin recording intermediate dungeon clears the following week and asked whether Yubi needed time to prepare. The reply came almost instantly. Jaya enthusiastically told him she had already been waiting for this moment. A moment later, she even sent him preview images of the marketing campaign Yubi had prepared in advance, including advertisement for dungeon clear videos and strategy guides. Jinwoo stared blankly at the massive amount of preparation she had already completed before simply replying that everything looked good. At that point, he fully accepted that marketing and business matters were completely safe in Jaya's hands. Thinking back, he remembered Ajin excitedly talking nonstop about the shadow wolf Jaya personally delivered to their house. Even their parents had been shocked by how sincerely Jaya treated them. Holding his phone, Jinwoo quietly smiled to himself. Compared to the frustrating negotiations he once had with the government, joining Yubi had clearly been the right decision. 1 week later, another intermediate dungeon boss collapsed in flames before Jinwoo and Paekryang. A system window announced the clear time: 6 minutes and 27 seconds. Jinwoo folded his arms with satisfaction after clearing yet another Monday intermediate dungeon record. Meanwhile, articles and online discussions about Beak Jinwoo continued spreading everywhere. But Jinwoo himself paid little attention to the growing fame. Right now, a different issue concerned him more. Despite reaching the point where she should have been capable of using it, Paekryang still could not properly activate the link skill. She repeatedly failed while looking increasingly frustrated and confused. Noticing her strange behavior lately, Jinwoo eventually brought the matter up with Hunio. After listening quietly, Hunio calmly explained that Paekryang's mana control and abilities were already more than sufficient, which meant the problem was likely psychological rather than technical. According to him, Paekryang was unconsciously suppressing the skill herself. Jinwoo looked confused by the explanation, but Hunio pointed out something important. Recently, Jinwoo had been taking only Paekryang into dungeons. Because of that, she had grown attached to the attention and the time they spent alone together. Hunio explained that summons naturally desired acknowledgement and affection from their player, and deep down, Paekryang likely feared that if she mastered Link and became even stronger, Jinwoo would stop taking her alone into dungeons. When Jinwoo finally understood the reason, he could only laugh awkwardly. The situation felt strangely touching despite how ridiculous it sounded. After thinking for a moment, he asked Hunio what they should do. With a confident grin, Hunio suggested changing the training method entirely. His solution was simple. Stop bringing Pei Kriang into dungeons for a while. Although Jinwoo initially doubted such a plan could actually work, he eventually agreed to try it. Then, under the orange evening sky, a short time later, Pei Kriang suddenly ran toward them excitedly. To Jinwoo's surprise, the plan had worked perfectly. Pei Kriang successfully learned the Link skill, reached level 42, and unlocked Explosive Dragon Secret Arts, Link. The new ability allowed her to accumulate and chain together multiple explosive dragon waves at once. Watching her celebrate happily, Jinwoo admitted that Hunio's instincts really were surprisingly reliable sometimes. Although Jinwoo initially doubted Hunio's method, he eventually admitted that the instructor's instincts were strangely reliable. With a fairy resting quietly on his head, Jinwoo smiled faintly while watching Pei Kriang celebrate her success. He gently patted her head and praised her for working hard, and Pei Kriang happily thanked him. Looking down at her, Jinwoo admitted that he probably should have scolded her for unconsciously holding herself back all this time. But in the end, he could not bring himself to be upset. To him, a summon wanting more time and attention from its player felt almost like a hidden quest condition. And since fulfilling that wish caused no harm, he decided to simply accept it. After all, Pei Kriang only wanted to stay close to him a little longer. Pulling out the black card Jaya gave him earlier, Jinwoo suddenly announced that everyone would be taking a break from training to celebrate Pei Kriang learning her new skill. The summons immediately reacted with excitement. The card itself carried an enormous yearly spending limit from Yubi, making it more than enough for whatever celebration they wanted. But the moment Jinwoo mentioned taking a break from training, Hunio visibly froze. Watching the exhausted summons nearby, Jinwoo slowly realized something important. Hunio genuinely could not function properly without training. Trying not to laugh, Jinwoo cleared his throat and decided to establish an official rule moving forward. Whenever one of the summons learned a new skill, the entire group would take the day off and hold a party together. Pei Kriang and Ramba instantly lit up with excitement. Hunio, however, looked completely horrified by the idea. Jinwoo calmly reminded him that rest was also an important part of training and that maintaining good unity among the summons mattered too. After hearing that explanation, Hunio suddenly changed completely and enthusiastically agreed that teamwork itself was a form of discipline. Watching the sudden shift, Jinwoo quietly realized once again how surprisingly simple-minded Hunio could be sometimes. Not long after, the celebration officially began. Large mugs clinked together while food covered the table, and even the summons happily joined the feast. Pei Kriang stared in amazement at the fried chicken she had wanted so badly, while Ramba happily drank beside Hunio. The atmosphere remained relaxed and lively as everyone enjoyed themselves together for the first time in a while. Looking around at the smiling summons, Jinwoo quietly confirmed that everyone seemed satisfied. Then he slowly turned his gaze toward the sunset. At this point, the minimum preparations were finally complete. With a calm but serious expression, Jinwoo decided that the time had come to challenge the Tower of Trials. The Tower of Trials stood at the very top of endgame content. Its rewards completely eclipsed anything found in ordinary dungeons. Rare treasures, powerful upgrades, and opportunities beyond normal progression all existed inside that tower. But the price was equally extreme. Over the years, countless players had entered chasing those rewards and never returned. The tower had long earned a reputation as a graveyard for ambitious players. Later, inside Yubi's office, Jaya sat silently after hearing Jinwoo's next goal. She could hardly believe he was planning to enter the tower already. Jinwoo, however, remained calm and explained that he only intended to start with the first 10 floors. To him, it sounded no different from another scheduled step in his routine. Jaya immediately pointed out that even the country's highest-ranked players avoided the tower whenever possible. The place was treated as a disaster zone rather than content to clear. As she looked at him, she remembered the conversations they had shared before and realized once again how different he was from every other hunter she had met. She found herself growing uneasy. His confidence did not feel reckless. That was exactly what worried her. No one understood the value and danger of the tower better than someone in her position. Sitting across from him in the boardroom, she quietly asked if he had seriously decided already. Jin Woo simply answered that this had always been part of his plan. Hearing that, Jaya slowly began connecting everything she had learned. The impossible records, the calm attitude, the strange certainty, the experience that never matched his actual time as a player. At that moment, she felt it again. The person sitting in front of her was not just Baek Jin Woo. He was the legendary player who once conquered 100 floors. Compared to that, the lower sections of the tower probably meant very little to him. Still, she kept those thoughts to herself. She remembered their agreement. His past, his identity, and everything connected to that secret would stay hidden from both the public and his family. That promise remained unchanged. After a moment, she looked at him quietly and told him she would wait for his return. Jin Woo only gave a slightly awkward glance before bringing up another matter. This time, he would not be using any recording equipment. Jaya stared at him. That meant no videos, no guides, no sales, no information business. He was willingly passing up something that could generate enormous profit. But Jin Woo had already decided. His priorities were elsewhere. His thoughts moved to the summons waiting for him. Ramba, Paekryang, Hineo. For the Tower of Trials, bringing his strongest companions was essential. But there was still one problem: communication. He pictured moments where commands failed to connect and Ramba struggled to express herself while everyone moved at different speeds. Inside the tower, poor coordination could easily become fatal. Before entering, he needed a way to solve that problem. Jaya watched him think in silence. Then she relaxed her expression. There were other ways to make money. If entering the tower without recording was what he wanted, she would support it. With a lighter expression, she told him not to worry about business and to do whatever made him most comfortable. Jin Woo gave a small nod of appreciation. The room became quiet again. Then Jaya folded her hands together on the desk. After hesitating briefly, she looked at him seriously and asked if she could ask for one favor in return. Jin Woo looked up with slight surprise when Jaya asked for a favor. She explained that the national representative selection would begin in 2 months. Hearing the name, Jin Woo became interested. The selection tournament was held to choose the country's representatives for the World League, one of the highest stages available to players. Those who succeeded would earn the right to compete among the world's strongest and aim for the highest honors. Jin Woo leaned back and quietly considered it. Then he asked whether joining a guild or returning to headquarters was required to participate. Jaya shook her head and explained that official affiliation was unnecessary. A recommendation from a council member alone would qualify someone for entry. That answer made him think. He was certain he could pass the selection itself. The real question was whether entering would actually benefit him. Images of world-class rankers crossed his mind. With his current strength, competing internationally would not be impossible, but it would still be difficult. A faint smile appeared. The thought of facing truly powerful opponents was not unpleasant. His thoughts shifted to Paekryang. If her growth continued, and she mastered predation within the next few months, she could eventually stand against even the world's top players. Seeing him seriously consider it, Jaya became noticeably more energetic. She explained that national representatives received enormous government support. That finally caught his attention. Recently, he had been searching for ways to secure resources for another X-rank summon. Government support could shorten that process considerably. Jaya added that rewards varied depending on results, but often included large quantities of high-grade summoning scrolls. At that moment, Jin Woo's expression changed. Summoning scrolls. Supreme-grade scrolls in particular were almost impossible to obtain through normal means. The idea alone immediately raised the value of the tournament in his mind. After thinking briefly, Jin Woo agreed to participate. Jaya froze for a moment before breaking into a bright smile. Unable to hide her excitement, she reached across the desk and held his hands while thanking him sincerely. Jin Woo paused in surprise. He had expected a business response, not such an emotional reaction. After a brief silence, he calmly confirmed it. His participation in the national selection was decided. 1 week later, the scene shifted. Paekryang's staff glowed deep red as heat and embers spiraled around it, signaling the next stage of training had already begun. Inside the dim dungeon, The ground was covered with the defeated remains of giant reptilian monsters. Jin Woo and Pei Kriang stood quietly at the center of the battlefield. With a relaxed expression, Jin Woo asked whether she had finally become comfortable using the link skill. Pei Kriang lowered her head. Her grip tightened around her staff, and her face slowly turned red. After hesitating for a while, she gathered herself and admitted there was something she needed to tell him. With visible guilt, she confessed that she had intentionally delayed mastering the skill. She had enjoyed spending time clearing dungeons alone with him so much that she did not want that time to end. Jin Woo fell silent. The answer caught him completely off guard. Pei Kriang lowered her eyes again as guilt overtook her. Jin Woo thought for a moment. Strictly speaking, he should probably have corrected her behavior, but seeing her blame herself made that impossible. Instead, he reached out and gently rested a hand on her head. With a calm smile, he told her not to be so hard on herself. What mattered was that she told him honestly. He also reminded her that she remained one of the most important companions by his side. Pei Kriang looked up in surprise. Jin Woo explained that there was a reason he had spent so much time training with her. She was his X-rank summon and one of the strongest pieces of his entire team. That did not mean he cared less about the others. Images of Ramba, the Shadow Wolf, the Wind Falcon, and the rest crossed his mind. He valued all of them. But naturally, his expectations and reliance were different depending on their role. Pei Kriang stood frozen before finally relaxing. The guilt faded and was replaced with visible relief. After a moment, Jin Woo returned to the original topic and asked again if she felt ready to use Link properly now. This time she answered immediately and confidently. Satisfied, Jin Woo looked ahead. Training for the day was complete. There was only one destination left. Under a dark sky, the Tower of Trials stood in the distance. Floor after floor stretched upward into the unknown. The preparation period was over. It was finally time to enter the tower. The next day, Jin Woo arrived outside the Tower of Trials. Standing beside the entrance portal, the guard stopped him for verification. After confirming he was entering as a challenger, they checked his identification and approved his entry. Before allowing him through, they repeated the standard warning. Anyone who entered the tower and failed to return within 1 week would officially be marked as missing. After 1 month, they would be presumed dead. Jin Woo accepted the explanation without hesitation. Before stepping inside, he asked one final question. He wanted confirmation that his participation would remain confidential. The guards reassured him that the area around the tower was heavily restricted and inaccessible to both civilians and reporters. That answer eased his mind. More than public attention, he wanted to avoid worrying his family. If they learned he was entering the Tower of Trials, they would never stay calm. After taking one last look ahead, Jin Woo entered the portal. When the light disappeared, he found himself inside a ruined city. Broken roads stretched into the distance, and countless ghouls wandered through the streets. Jin Woo quietly looked around in surprise. There were far more monsters than expected. A system message appeared and informed that up to 3 parties can be deployed in the Tower of Trials. Jin Woo opened his setup menu. His teams had already been prepared in advance and equipped with the strongest runes available. After confirming everything, he summoned his party. At that moment, the system informed that the objective was to escape the ruined city of Chrome, and the city is under a curse. Seeing the restriction, Jin Woo immediately adjusted his plan. Flying summons would be unusable here, and without water support, there was no reason to deploy certain units. Instead, he turned toward Hungyo and Ramba and gave the signal they had discussed beforehand. The two moved immediately. Hungyo leaped across rooftops while Ramba hurried after him. Watching them leave, Jin Woo stayed calm. Among tower monsters, ghouls moved slowly and had poor pursuit speed. But that weakness came with a trade-off. Their durability was absurd. Their attacks were powerful, and even a scratch from their poison claws could become fatal. Try to eliminate everything would only waste time. Jin Woo advanced while giving clear orders. Their goal was not extermination. Break through the alleys. Avoid prolonged fights. Strike weak points and keep moving. His summons immediately began opening a path. Even while running, Jin Woo could not help noticing the sheer number of enemies surrounding them. Still, the first floor itself was simple if you already knew the route. After some time, Jin Woo looked toward the rooftops. Right on cue, Hungyo returned. He had located what they needed. Jin Woo accepted the recovered map and quickly compared it with nearby landmarks. Using the cathedral as a reference point, he identified their current location. Fortunately, the exit was close, but there was one obstacle. To escape this route, they would need to pass the giant ghoul. Hungyo immediately volunteered to hold it back. Ramba immediately protested and complained that she deserved credit too, then used the opportunity to negotiate for cream bread afterward. Jinwoo gave a tired response and promised they could discuss rewards later. Then his expression turned serious. The giant ghoul should already be nearby. Normally, challengers divided into separate parties. Some distracted the boss, while others escaped. But that strategy existed for ordinary players. Jinwoo looked toward Pei Kriang. He asked about her progress. Pei Kriang confirmed she had continued building link stacks. 5 stacks were already prepared. Jinwoo nodded. Good. There was no need to rush. They would continue stacking while moving. Pei Kriang answered immediately and followed his lead. Jinwoo looked toward the enormous silhouette rising in the distance. Against normal players, the giant ghoul was a major obstacle. But this team was different. With an EX rank summon prepared, they did not need to stall. They only needed one shot.
A pack of ghouls rushed forward with their jaws wide open. Jin Woo immediately pointed down the street and directed everyone toward the safest route. The frost cat dashed ahead, freezing the path before them while the titanium golem charged behind it. From the rear, Combat Sheriff carefully lined up a shot. The bullet struck the frozen ghouls, shattering them into countless icy fragments. Jin Woo praised both summons before his attention shifted ahead. A massive giant ghoul slowly rose between the ruined building. Without hesitation, Jin Woo entrusted the rear defense to the titanium golem. The giant summon blocked the pursuing horde, sweeping dozens of ghouls into its massive hands before crushing them with overwhelming force. Standing beside Hungyo, Jinwoo asked if everything was ready. Hungyo confidently confirmed. Since this was only the first floor, Jinwoo saw no reason to hesitate. He immediately gave the next orders. Ramba continued providing buffs while Pakryung prepared explosive dragon wave. Meanwhile, Hungyo's job was to gather every enemy into the spell's range. As support magic strengthened the team, Hungyo charged directly toward the giant ghoul. Its enormous arm swung toward him, but the attack was painfully slow. Hungyo easily cut through its arm before leaping behind the monster. Unable to keep up, the giant ghoul collapsed to one knee. That was the opening. Pakryung raised her staff as blazing fire gathered around her. A fully charged explosive dragon wave erupted forward, swallowing the giant ghoul in an overwhelming torrent of flames. Even its incredible defense could not withstand the attack. As the flames consumed the monster, Hungyo finished the battle with a clean strike across its neck. Watching the giant ghoul collapse, Jinwoo praised everyone's teamwork. Glancing at the time, he realized barely 10 minutes had passed. If the tower had a speed ranking, he was confident he would easily claim first place. Without stopping, he ordered everyone to continue forward. The group quickly broke through the remaining ghouls, using the map to navigate the ruined city while support magic kept everyone moving efficiently. Soon, they blasted through the final wall and escaped the cursed city of Chrome. With the first floor cleared, a reward chest descended from above. The system announced that Jin Woo had conquered the first floor of the Tower of Trials and rewarded him with a random fusion blueprint box. As Hungyo dragged Rambo away from another argument, Jin Woo smiled, congratulated everyone on their work, and told the team it was time to head back. Everyone happily agreed. Outside the tower, 2 guards stood watch near the entrance. When Jin Woo suddenly walked out of the portal, both froze in disbelief. Less than 20 minutes had passed since he entered. They had never seen anyone clear a tower floor that quickly. Confused by their reaction, Jin Woo simply asked whether returning early was a problem. The guards quickly assured him there was no issue. Satisfied, Jin Woo thanked them, said he would return again tomorrow, and casually walked away. The guards watched him leave in stunned silence, wondering if he truly intended to challenge the second floor the very next day. Neither of them could shake the feeling that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. The scene then shifted to Yubai's office. While taking a short break, Jaya found herself thinking about the rainbow snail she had given to Jin Woo's mother. Although it was a B-rank summon, it possessed almost no combat ability. Because of that, most players ignored it completely, and considered it worthless. However, Desung had already discovered its true value. Its mucus had remarkable skincare properties, restoring damaged skin and reducing wrinkles, and the company was already researching it as a premium cosmetic product. Jaya knew that once the product reached the market, both the rainbow snail's rarity and value would increase dramatically. Even so, she felt giving it to Jin Woo's mother had been the right decision. At Jin Woo's home, his mother suddenly cried out in surprise. Her family rushed over as she stared into a mirror in disbelief. The wrinkles where she had applied the rainbow snail's mucus had completely disappeared. Even her husband was amazed, joking that she looked years younger. She remained speechless. The effect was incredible despite using only a tiny amount. Looking at the remaining mucus, she wondered how something so ordinary-looking could produce such unbelievable results, while the rainbow snail proudly admired its own work nearby. The exhausted rainbow snail collapsed onto the table. A notification appeared, explaining that all of its mucus had been used and that it required 24 hours to recharge. Only mucus produced directly by the rainbow snail carried the special effect. Realizing this, Jin Woo's mother couldn't help imagining the results if it were applied regularly. Elsewhere, Jaya proudly celebrated the success of her decision, while Jin Woo's mother sincerely thanked her for the thoughtful gift. The scene then shifted to a quiet training ground surrounded by cliff. Jin Woo sat before the reward chest while his summons gathered nearby. With the wind fairy resting on his head, he complained that the game's reward system depended far too much on luck. Looking at the chest, he questioned whether this was really the reward for clearing the first floor of the Tower of Trial. Ramba tried to encourage him, believing there would still be something useful inside. When the chest opened, several low-rank items floated into the air. Jin Woo was not surprised. Random rewards naturally came with a high chance of duplicates, and he had never expected much from a first-floor reward. Hunjio calmly reminded everyone that training was far more important. Ramba immediately objected, pointing out they had just finished clearing the tower. Hunjio explained that their current strength was nowhere near enough for the 10th floor boss, One-Eyed. Ignoring Ramba's complaints, he grabbed her and declared it was time to resume training, prompting her to desperately call for Jin Woo's help. Watching the usual scene unfold, Jin Woo smiled faintly and dismissed the disappointing rewards. To him, strengthening his summons mattered far more. Hunjio immediately announced a light warm-up consisting of 100 push-ups. At that moment, purple light burst from the reward chest. Jin Woo activated the random fusion blueprint box. A brilliant flash revealed its contents. The system announced that he had obtained a B-rank guaranteed summoning scroll blueprint. Jin Woo stared at it in disbelief. After reading its description, he realized it could create a B-rank summoning scroll that guaranteed the exact B-rank summon he selected. That immediately gave him an idea. Since 2 summons removed during the bug patch had originally been B-rank, perhaps obtaining them again was still possible. The Whirlwind Slayer and Rune Dwarf immediately came to mind. Either one would greatly strengthen his team. But another problem quickly surfaced. Everything depended on how the system currently classified their ranks. If they were now considered X-rank summons, this blueprint would be useless. Watching his summons continue training, another possibility occurred to him. Since those summons originally came from lower-grade scrolls, perhaps that condition still remained. He pictured Dahl's overwhelming combat ability and Lun's unmatched rune crafting. No matter which one he obtained, the improvement would be enormous. Unfortunately, reality quickly caught up with his excitement. Crafting the scroll required a rare material known as King's Proof. He immediately remembered that King's Proof only dropped from the tower boss that appeared every 10 floors. Since it was a bound item, no player could trade or give one away. There was only one way to obtain it. He had to defeat the tower bosses himself. After thinking quietly for a moment, Jin Woo stood up with renewed determination. Choosing the summon could wait. For now, the priority was simple: strengthen his summons and defeat One-Eyed on the 10th floor. He gathered everyone together and declared that reaching the 10th floor came before everything else. Hunjio immediately became excited at the thought of training alongside Jin Woo. Meanwhile, Pakryung lay completely exhausted, weakly asking when they were finally going home. Jin Woo casually answered that they could leave after Ramba burned off every calorie from the cream bread she had eaten. Ramba instantly froze in horror. Her scream echoed across the training grounds. Elsewhere, the director received an official notification confirming confirming that Jin Woo had cleared the first floor of the Tower of Trial. Frustrated, he asked whether anyone had managed to contact Jin Woo yet. His thoughts drifted back to Jaya, who had previously admitted that although Jin Woo was affiliated with Yubai, they had no real control over him. He also remembered Chang mocking him for letting Jin Woo slip away. Back in the present, his staff reported that every attempt to contact Jin Woo had failed. The director could only sigh. Someone with Jin Woo's popularity and talent would bring enormous public support. Combined with his appearance, he could easily become a national celebrity. Before he could think further, another employee rushed into the office with urgent news. Jin Woo had cleared the tower again. Assuming it was only the second floor, the director casually asked how long it had taken. The employee hesitated before revealing the truth. Jin Woo had cleared every floor from the second through the ninth in less than an hour. The director immediately spat out his coffee and collapsed in complete disbelief. Yesterday, Jin Woo had only cleared the first floor. Now he had reached the ninth without leaving the tower a single time. The employee confirmed the records had already been verified. Every clear was authentic. The report also noted that many South Korean rankers had never even reached the ninth floor. Although official rank evaluations would not happen until next year, a record like this practically guaranteed Jin Woo's place among them. Still lying on the floor, the director admitted he wanted Jin Woo on his side more than ever. His staff could only watch in awkward silence. Later that night, the scene shifted to Jin Woo's bedroom. After clearing 9 tower floors in a single run, he collapsed onto his bed in exhaustion. Looking at his summons, he thanked them for their hard work and decided they would check the rewards the following day. Everyone happily agreed. The tiny wind fairy immediately flopped onto him, completely exhausted as well. Just as the group prepared to rest, Hunjio's stern voice interrupted the peaceful atmosphere. Even if their lord was resting, they still had training to do. The others stared at him in disbelief. Ramba immediately protested, unable to believe he intended to continue training after Jin Woo had already declared the day over. Hunjio quietly covered Ramba's mouth and reminded her that their lord was sleeping, so she needed to keep her voice down. Still dissatisfied, Ramba argued that Jin Woo had clearly given everyone the day off. Hunjio calmly reminded her that during the battle with the giant ghoul on the 7th floor, her attack speed buff expired at a critical moment. He also pointed out that she had paused to rest during the fight against the ghoul lord on the 8th floor. Embarrassed, Ramba questioned how he even noticed details like that. She insisted it was unreasonable to expect such a tiny fairy to swing her staff non-stop throughout every battle. Hunjio remained firm. Even the smallest mistake, he explained, could one day cost their lord his life. Ramba argued that Jin Woo could have defeated the ghoul lord even without her support. Hunjio reminded everyone that Jin Woo intended to keep climbing the tower. As the difficulty increased, repeated mistakes from his summons could eventually become fatal. His words immediately silenced Ramba. Turning toward Pakryang, Hunjio reviewed her performance as well. She had missed 2 attacks on the 5th floor, 1 on the 7th, and 2 more on the 9th. Pakryang quietly admitted her mistakes. Hunjio explained that making mistakes was normal. Ignoring them after recognizing them was the real problem. Then, with perfect seriousness, he put on his cap, slid on a pair of sunglasses, hung a whistle around his neck, and fully transformed into a merciless drill instructor. One loud whistle later, he announced another round of hellish training. Ramba and Pakryang could only stare in despair before desperately calling out for Jin Woo. Moments later, Jin Woo suddenly woke up covered in sweat, wondering why it had become so hot. The following morning, he sat on a bench and opened his inventory to inspect the tower rewards. Several valuable items immediately caught his attention. Among them were 10 essences of light, which were currently in high demand and would sell easily. He also received 3 supreme-grade summoning scrolls. However, the most valuable reward was a supreme-grade light speed rune. Watching the exhausted Ramba continue training under Hunjio's supervision, Jin Woo quickly realized the rune was meant for her. Endgame graduation runes were essential for every summon to reach their full potential, and light speed was one of Ramba's required runes. Deciding to prioritize her growth, Jin Woo used 2 supreme-grade rune selection tickets to obtain 2 more light speed runes. That left only 3 remaining to complete the full set. He decided to save the universal polishing agents until every rune had been collected. As for the intermediate skill book selection tickets, he chose to keep them for future use. After organizing everything, Jin Woo confirmed the items he intended to sell. Smiling to himself, he decided it was finally time to visit Ajin after being away for so long. The scene shifted to the player's zone. Upon arriving, Jin Woo was surprised to find Ajin talking with Jaya. Ajin immediately greeted him, while Jaya removed her mask and smiled. Jaya explained that Ajin had partnered with Yubai so she could continue farming runes while receiving help with marketing and customer management. Ajin added that the arrangement would finally give her more free time. When Jin Woo reminded her that she once claimed trading was more enjoyable than farming, she casually explained that her wolfy elf still needed time to hunt. She confidently insisted that combining a wolf and an elf naturally created a wolfy elf, leaving Jaya smiling awkwardly. Watching the two together, Jin Woo quietly wondered when they had become so close. After thinking it over, he decided partnering with Yubai was probably the right choice. He then asked whether Ajin's commission rate would remain unchanged. Coincidentally, Jaya had wanted to discuss the same topic. Jin Woo immediately approved keeping Ajin's commission fixed at 20% and left the remaining business decisions to Jaya. With Ajin now acting as director and additional workers joining the company, he accepted the new arrangement without issue. Ajin then asked whether he had come to sell more items. Jin Woo confirmed it, and the two immediately began working together. Within minutes, every calculation and registration was finished. Ajin collapsed from exhaustion, wondering if Jin Woo's processing speed was even human. With the transaction complete, Jin Woo requested 10 high-grade summoning scrolls, 10 world tree leaves, and 3 supreme-grade light speed runes. Ajin was stunned by the request, knowing that even Yubai would struggle to gather such rare runes quickly. Jaya confidently accepted the challenge. She promised to collect everything within a month, even if she had to rely on Desung's influence. Jin Woo simply thanked her. Before leaving, he revealed he had gifts for both Ajin and Jaya. 2 glowing books appeared above his hand. Each was an intermediate skill book selection ticket. After examining hers, Ajin discovered it could teach one of her summons a new skill. The selected skill was Desperate Call, allowing the user to forcibly summon a designated player once each day. Jin Woo told both of them to register him as the target so they could call him whenever they were in danger. Watching the two together, Jaya quietly realized she had become someone Jin Woo wanted to protect. Holding the book tightly, she felt all of her hard work had finally been rewarded. The system confirmed that both Ajin and Jaya designated Jin Woo as the target, and he immediately accepted. Both gratefully thanked him. Jin Woo smiled, knowing he still needed to become much stronger so he could always answer their calls. He even considered giving the same skill to his parents in the future. Elsewhere, workers continued moving cargo inside a busy warehouse. The diamond golem effortlessly carried enormous stacks of boxes, leaving everyone impressed. Jin Woo's father proudly praised his son as the summon casually lifted an entire refrigerator by itself. A nearby worker wondered why anyone would use such an expensive summon for warehouse work instead of selling it. Others explained that the diamond golem had already become famous across construction sites and was worth nearly 1 billion won. Hearing that figure, Jin Woo's father froze. Checking online, he confirmed the price for himself. The number left him speechless. His imagination immediately ran wild. He pictured buying a larger home where the whole family and even their dog could live comfortably. He imagined taking his wife on dates, driving luxury cars, and finally enjoying the life he had always dreamed about. Then another dream appeared. His eyes locked onto the sign for Bike Siblings Chicken. With renewed determination, he decided the time had finally come to open the family chicken restaurant he had always wanted. As he laughed excitedly to himself about becoming a successful business owner, the surrounding workers could only watch in complete confusion. To him, this truly felt like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Seeing the diamond golem's confused reaction only made Jin Woo's father thank Jaya even more enthusiastically. Calling out to Mr. Kim, he declared that he wanted to sell the diamond golem, bet everything on his dream of opening a chicken restaurant, and asked whether Mr. Kim wanted to start over alongside him. Later at home, he excitedly told his wife that the diamond golem Jaya had given them was worth nearly 1 billion won. His wife was left speechless. Holding up a newspaper, he explained that he wanted to sell it and finally open the chicken restaurant he had dreamed about for years. Although his wife worried that selling such a precious gift was too much, he insisted this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Their conversation was interrupted when Jin Woo returned home. His father asked why he was back so early, and Jin Woo revealed that he had something to give both of them. After teaching the rainbow snail the skill Desperate Call, Jin Woo explained how it worked before handing another skill book to his father and encouraging him to learn it as well. Although his father reluctantly agreed, Jin Woo noticed he still seemed troubled. Holding the diamond golem in silence, his wife gently called out to him. After a long sigh, he admitted that he still wanted to open the chicken restaurant. His wife smiled, explaining that making fried chicken had always been his lifelong dream. His only hesitation came from the fact that the diamond golem had been Jin Woo's gift. Jin Woo smiled and assured him there was no need to sell it. Taking out his phone, he immediately contacted Jaya. His stunned parents realized he was speaking directly with the granddaughter of the Desung group. Without hesitation, Jin Woo asked how much dividend Yubai could currently pay out. After a brief calculation, Jaya replied that the company could easily distribute as much as 50 billion won. Even Jin Woo was surprised by how much the company had grown. He calmly explained that he only needed 1 billion won. Still unable to understand what was happening, his parents watched silently as Jaya immediately agreed and asked whether something had happened. Jin Woo simply answered that it was for a personal matter, deciding not to trouble her with any further explanation. Jaya promised to calculate the taxes, transfer exactly 1 billion won, and reminded him to contact her whenever he needed anything else. After thanking her, Jin Woo ended the call. Turning toward his father, he explained that the money would soon arrive and that he could finally open the restaurant. His father immediately refused to accept it. Jin Woo gently insisted that supporting his parents was simply a son's responsibility. Instead of selling the diamond golem, he suggested registering the new skill on it and using it to help with the restaurant. After all, lifting heavy drums of cooking oil and boxes of ingredients would become effortless. Hearing that, his father suddenly remembered how Jin Woo had been lying in a hospital bed only a few months earlier. His mother could no longer hold back her emotions. She rushed over and embraced him tightly, proudly telling him how much he had grown. Holding her quietly, Jin Woo could only wish he had done something like this for them much sooner. Watching the emotional moment, his father quietly thanked his son as memories of his children happily eating his homemade fried chicken filled his mind. The following day, training continued. Hunjio announced that everyone still had 50 sets remaining. His brutal routine counted every simultaneous explosion as a single repetition, leaving Ramba horrified that they were nowhere near finished. While the summons continued training, Jin Woo checked a message from his father asking whether Bike Siblings Chicken would be a good restaurant name. The message made him laugh. Imagining his father happily preparing for the grand opening, Jin Woo quietly realized becoming a player had been worth everything. Just then, someone called his name. Jaya arrived at the training ground with a smile. When Jin Woo asked why she had come, she casually explained that she wanted some exercise before work. He pointed out that plenty of gyms were much closer. Jaya simply joked that exercising together outdoors sounded far more enjoyable. Then she revealed she had brought him a gift. Telling him not to be surprised, she opened a trade window. Inside were 3 Supreme Grade Rune polishing agents and another Supreme Grade Rune. Jin Woo was left speechless. Jaya explained that she had searched trading markets across the world just to find it and wanted to deliver it as quickly as possible. Deeply moved, Jin Woo sincerely thanked her for everything she had done. She simply smiled and said she was only fulfilling his request. After inspecting the item, Jin Woo realized it was another Supreme Grade Light Speed rune. Only 100 of them existed worldwide. With all 6 runes equipped, the completed set increased attack speed by 300%, with an additional 200% bonus for staff-wielding summon. Unable to contain his excitement, Jin Woo decided to enhance it immediately. Before leaving, he asked Jaya to train with Hunjio. Curious, she asked where he was going. Without answering, Jin Woo sprinted toward the enhancement center. Arriving moments later, he immediately registered the Supreme Grade Light Speed rune. Using spare runes together with a polishing agent, he began enhancing it. Without hesitation, he confirmed the process. Blue energy engulfed the rune as it rapidly advanced through every level until reaching the maximum level 10. The enhancement completed successfully. The finished rune granted the full light speed set effect while increasing intelligence by 84% and 60 points, along with agility by 72% and another 60 points. Jin Woo could hardly believe how powerful it had become. The moment he equipped it to Ramba, she completed the entire light speed set. As a staff user, her attack speed immediately skyrocketed by an incredible 500%. Watching the tiny fairy spin through the air at unbelievable speed, Jinwoo jokingly remarked that he no longer needed a fan. And this was only an endgame rune. Once Ramba continued leveling and unlocked her future abilities, she would become even more terrifying. Thinking back to Jaya's smiling face, Jinwoo quietly realized none of this would have been possible without her support. The effort she put into finding such a priceless rune made him trust her even more. For the first time, he seriously considered telling her everything. Meanwhile, back at the training ground, Jaya desperately ran laps while Ramba and Pakryang chased closely behind. The next morning, Ramba flew happily through the air while Jinwoo remarked that endgame runes truly lived up to their reputation. Swinging her staff with excitement, Ramba said it felt just like the old days. Watching with satisfaction, Jinwoo realized she had finally equipped her complete set of endgame runes. She was now ready to challenge the 10th floor of the Tower of Trials. Hunjio suddenly grabbed her shoulders and praised how much her staff technique had improved. Ramba looked up in surprise as Hunjio promised to draw out even more of her hidden potential and make her even faster, leaving her shivering at the thought of his training. Watching them quietly, Jinwoo reflected that with the proper runes, even Hunjio could probably clear the 20th floor without much trouble. Still, there was no need to rush. Reaching the 10th floor was enough for now, especially since his summons were already growing much faster than expected. Just then Jaya arrived at the training ground. Smiling, she asked if he had come before everyone else. Jinwoo wondered whether traveling there every day just to exercise was tiring. Jaya simply replied that she found it refreshing. Watching the summons train, she explained that if they worked this hard every day, she should do the same. Her attention shifted to Ramba, whose speed had increased dramatically after completing her endgame rune set. Jinwoo quietly thanked her. Jaya smiled and said the rest of the summons would become just as powerful once they received their own endgame rune. She reminded him that he could always ask her for help whenever he needed it. Jinwoo sincerely thanked her once again. Looking back on everything she had done, he realized his former self would never have imagined someone like Jaya working so hard for him. She had supported both him and his family without expecting anything in return. At last, he understood that she had not been trying to buy his loyalty. She had simply been trying to earn his trust. Having made up his mind, Jinwoo told her there was something he wanted to reveal. Surprised by his serious tone, Jaya listened quietly. For a brief moment, she even wondered whether he was about to confess that he was the legendary god Jinwoo. Instead, Jinwoo simply called over his summon. After they gathered, he calmly announced that they no longer needed to stay silent in front of Jaya. She blinked in confusion. Then Ramba immediately complained about how frustrating it had been to remain quiet all this time. The other summons quickly introduced themselves, thanked Jaya for helping gather their runes, and even asked her to bring cream bread the next time she visited. Jaya stood frozen in complete disbelief. Summons were not supposed to speak. Jinwoo awkwardly apologized, explaining that one part of the truth still had to remain secret. Trying to move past the subject, he suggested returning to training. Still holding Ramba, Jaya admitted the experience felt like suddenly hearing a pet dog start talking. As she stared at the tiny fairy, another thought crossed her mind. Could these talking summons somehow be connected to God Jinwoo as well? Several days later, the scene shifted back to the Tower of Trials. Standing before the entrance, Jinwoo adjusted the recording device attached to his jacket before pulling on his fingerless gloves. Everything was finally ready. This time he would record the challenge. Earlier, Jaya had suggested filming his attempt at the 10th floor. At first, Jinwoo worried the footage might reveal too much. Jaya assured him that the recording was not meant for sale. She simply wanted to preserve it until the day he became truly famous. She even imagined showing the footage during a future press conference announcing the legendary god Jinwoo. Jinwoo doubted every part of the recording would make good publicity. Even so, recording it now was easier than trying to recreate it later. For a moment, he considered placing system restrictions on the footage. Then he dismissed the idea. He trusted Jaya enough to leave it as it was. Before he entered, Jaya quietly asked him not to get hurt. The others also wished him luck and urged him to return safely. Jinwoo smiled, waved goodbye, and promised he would. Watching everyone worry about him, he realized they seemed even more nervous than he was. Inside the tower, a single mistake could cost someone their life. Their concern was completely understandable. Still, his experience told him there was no chance he would fall on the 10th floor. With that confidence, he stepped through the portal. A system message immediately appeared. His objective was simple: defeat the S-rank boss One-Eyed. The battlefield beyond lay in ruins. Almost instantly, an enormous one-eyed monster emerged and released a deafening roar. Its gigantic eye locked onto Jinwoo as it opened its massive jaws. Clearing his mind, Jinwoo focused entirely on the battle. He opened his summon interface. One by one, his summons appeared beside him. Ramba immediately cast powerful buffs over the entire team. Pakrium began building link stacks. At Jinwoo's command, the stone golem charged forward while the rest of the summons focused on buying time until their preparations were complete. One-Eyed answered with a devastating swipe that sent the stone golem sliding across the battlefield. Combat Sheriff opened fire while the dragons unleashed torrents of flame. Bullets, fire, and powerful slashes bombarded the giant monster, forcing it onto the defensive. Jinwoo calmly watched the battle. The opportunity was almost here. Even after another heavy strike knocked the lizard summon backward, he continued waiting. Wrapped in swirling green energy, Hunjio smiled confidently. The moment had arrived. Planting his feet firmly, he stepped forward and prepared to make his move.